Chapter 399. The Marquis Bull was tied up with metal handcuffs and shackles. After the Sapphire Grand Duke took out the blue gem from his chest, his body quickly shriveled, and his armor could hardly be worn. The blue flames also gradually disappeared, turning into a pale green light that emerged from the gaps in the armor, just like the Curtis truth that Liszt had seen before. This is probably the true face of the Lich. The pale green soul light and the blue flames of the Marquis Bull before are the blessings of the Sapphire Dragon. Liszt glanced at the dispirited Lich Andy and no longer paid attention to it. He cast magic eyes and repeatedly observed the rotting Sapphire Dragon, not missing any details of its body, from head to tail, from outside to inside. The Grand Duke quickly stuffed the blue gem into the Sapphire Dragon's mouth. The Sapphire Dragon opened its mouth and sucked, and the blue gem disappeared into its stomach. Then, its blue eyes continued to stare at the Marquis Bull. To be precise, it stared at the Marquis Bull's greatsword that was emitting blue flames on the ground. The blue flames on the greatsword had been extinguished, revealing the white blade. A knight picked up the greatsword and handed it to the Grand Duke. The Grand Duke stroked the blade. The Sapphire Dragon became inexplicably irritable, and its broken foreleg trembled violently. The next moment, the Grand Duke had already handed the greatsword to the Sapphire Dragon's mouth. The Sapphire Dragon inhaled and swallowed the greatsword into its stomach. It opened its mouth and spat out a dragon's roar. It suddenly spread its wings and stomped on the ground, setting off a gust of wind and leaped into the sky. It flew into the distance without looking back. The dark clouds in the sky had long dispersed, and the sun shone on its broken body, blooming a brilliant sapphire blue. It turned into a blue dot and eventually disappeared into the sky. From its appearance to its departure, it took no more than 5 minutes, but its figure was firmly engraved in the hearts of all the night, making every knight's blood boil. Riding a dragon was definitely a life achievement that all knight dreamed of. Most knight might not see the existence of a dragon in their lifetime. Now, more than 10,000 knight were lucky to have almost zero contact with the only known dragon in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. The Archduke did not say any pleasantries. After sending off the Sapphire Dragon, he went straight to the ruined Fort Juniper and gathered his followers to discuss the aftermath of the war. As for the others, they were resting, setting up camp, and cleaning up the battlefield. As a lesser lord, Liszt naturally didn't have to be busy. He gathered with Levis, Eunice, and Trick and chatted about the Sapphire Dragon. Levis had seen the Sapphire Dragon, so he could distinguish the changes in the Sapphire Dragon. This is very different from the Sapphire Dragon I saw on Blue Dragon Island. At that time, the Sapphire Dragon was covered in exquisite scales, like an oversized sapphire. I don't know what it experienced to make it look like this. Although it's still very majestic, it looks strange. It must have been Marquis Bull's assassination that seriously injured and disfigured the Sapphire Dragon, said Liszt. Did you notice the relationship between the Grand Duke and the Sapphire Dragon? Are you talking about the dragon's might? Trick keenly observed this. The Sapphire Dragon is gone, but the dragon's might is still irritating my skin. The Grand Duke also has the dragon's might. Then, the three did not continue this topic. This was not the right occasion to discuss the master of this country. The topic quickly shifted to the war. There was a hint of regret in Yuna's tone. It's a pity that I couldn't kill a great wizard. My achievements are not enough to make up for the losses of the Grey Orders of Chivalry. But we completed the order to besiege Iron Hoof Island, and the Grand Duke's dragon is alive and well. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire will soon recover its prosperity. In the future, the Earl will lead us to continue to expand the continent. Trick comforted. The Earl and Lord Macero followed the Crown Prince to attack together. This achievement may be far beyond imagination. Marquis Bull made a shocking appearance and used the news of the Sapphire Dragon's death to sway the besieging knight. Macero was the first to follow the Crown Prince to attack, and Lee William was the second. It turned out that their gamble was successful. This unhesitating loyalty was comparable to a glorious victory in battle. Yunus suddenly said excitedly, "Do you think the Earl will be promoted to the new Marquis of the country because of this war?" Trick pondered. Levis rubbed his palms and began to worry about the gains and losses. This should be unlikely, right? List glanced at his brother and felt that he was a little arrogant. He could not help but interrupt his fantasy. "Indeed, it is impossible. Marquis Bull is just a marquis. All the nobles in the country participated in the attack. First, there were no resources created, and second, there was no expansion of the territory. How could he be given the title of marquis? The old marquis had followed the previous Grand Dukes to the continent to plunder a large number of resources to support the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. Now it was just a domestic rebellion. Unless Lee William alone led the orders of chivalry to destroy the Iron Hoof Island, there would be no merit at all. After analyzing the reality, he gave Levis a little hope. But Lord Father has definitely become a strong competitor for the title of Marquis in the eyes of the Grand Duke and the Crown Prince. As long as you make enough contributions, the title of Marquis will come naturally. There was no reason for the Lord to suppress such a loyal follower. Under the same conditions, Lee William would definitely be better. For the Lord, sometimes the loyalty of a follower was more important than strength. Suppressing the greed that he should not have, Levis's mind became clear again. He could not help but say to List, "In any case, after you go back, you should be the new Viscount." Trick and Yunus both nodded. List's contributions were obvious. In the Battle of Oxhair City, it was thanks to Dosen's help in attacking the city and helping Lee William to kill Count Snade. In the Battle of Oxbine City, he got some heads, but in the Battle of Oxbine City, he also got some heads, but his contribution was not big. In the Battle of Ox Tendon City, which was also the Battle of Castle Juniper, he played a very important role. The hole in the wall of Juniper Castle was destroyed by Dosen, and the Crown Prince personally recognized this contribution. Colluding with the orders of chivalry to attack the city was List's suggestion. Not only did he make a contribution, but he also proved his loyalty. Not everyone had the courage to go against the Marquis Bull who had become a lich. The only pity was that he did not break the magic array and kill a few great sorcerers. Now that the battle was over, no one knew who would catch the escaping great sorcerers. In short, the title of Viscount was basically in List's pocket. Suddenly, Levis thought of a question: if the Crown Prince remembers you, it is likely that he will directly recruit you as his follower. List, will you accept the Crown Prince's enfeoffment? It was difficult for followers like Yunus and Trick to change their allegiance. But in the case of List, who was the second son of the direct bloodline of the Lord, it was easy to change allegiance, and the family would also support this behavior. List shook his head. "I intend to choose a deserted island near Coral Island as my territory." "Are there any deserted islands near Coral Island?" Levis curiously asked. "We are already in the northeasternmost corner of the Grand Duchy." Father said that he had searched for a long time before finding a suitable earl fief. Except for Viscount Trick's Beer Island, no new islands were found. There will always be, the Azure Wave Sea is so big. Chapter 400. The meeting in Fort Juniper lasted for 2 days. During these 2 days, the knight of each fief left one after another. The Knight of Coral Island also left Fort Juniper on July 12, following the Count's orders. Levis, lead the orders of chivalry back to Oxhorn City first and rendezvous with the family's fleet. Once the meeting is over, I will directly head for Oxhorn City. Yes, Sir Father. After the Count left the orders of chivalry and returned to Fort Juniper, List chased after him and asked, "Father, it shouldn't be a problem for me to search for a few craftsmen in the cities along the way and take them away, right? The Grand Duke's orders of chivalry have already taken over the major cities. Therefore, don't do that. Now that we are discussing military exploits, it is best to abide by the rules. It is not worth it to destroy the glory that should belong to you because of some trivial matters." The count said, "Your title of viscount can be determined in this battle. This is the most important thing." In theory, Li William had the status of a fief count and could enfeoff anyone as a viscount. But in fact, he only had the right to divide his own fief, as well as the right to propose and trade with new fiefs. According to the official definition, if he divided a piece of land on Coral Island for his followers to be enfeoffed, the court would not interfere in the slightest. Even if it was 10 viscounts, as long as there was land to divide. However, Coral Island was only so big. A lot of land had already been divided to accommodate 2 viscounts. If another city was divided, it would shake the finances of Tulip Castle. At this time, it was necessary to trade new fiefs from the Grand Duchy to enfeoff followers. The reward required for the trade was military exploits. The court had the right to inspect and review the enfeoffed knight. If the enfeoffed knight did not meet the enfeoffment conditions determined by the court, then the court had the right to refuse the trade of the new fief. The military exploits of the followers would be stored in the form of material rewards or accumulated military exploits. Then, the military exploits would be redeemed in a suitable way. Li William had not increased the size of his fief for many years and had redeemed his military exploits in the form of material rewards because the trade requirements for new fiefs were very high. Unless he could accumulate enough military exploits to be promoted to marquis and obtain a larger island as a fief, exchanging military exploits for a new island was not only not worthwhile, but also meaningless. Do I have enough battle credits? That's enough. The first prince is very satisfied with the performance of the Taro family and the Tulip family. He said a lot of good things and mentioned you. If you are willing, you can even become the eldest prince's follower. However, I know that you are developing a new island? Li William revealed. He already knew about List's development of Black Horse Island. List nodded and did not deny it. I want Black Horse Island as a fief. The island covers an area of about 2,000 square kilometers, about the size of a small city. Black Horse Island, it will be realized soon. By the way, Sir Father, can I keep the flower town for a long time? It is just a small town. I can pay the family a bit more as a long-term lease. William Li thought for a while and said, "Sure, we can talk about this later. I have to go to the meeting now." Waiting for the count to leave. List was still thinking about his own enfeoffment. He has studied the knight enfeoffment system. In this world dominated by the knight, the enfeoffment system of various countries is essentially similar. In academic terms, it is inherited from the enfeoffment system of the Moon Empire. The lord has independent ownership of the territory. But there are many differences in form. The enfeoffment system of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire and the suzerain of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom is different. The Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom is a feudal form of superimposed fiefs, while the Grand Duchy of Sapphire is a feudal form of island replacement. Superimposed fiefs. This refers to the fact that territories can be obtained continuously and superimposed together. For example, a knight, after becoming a lord knight, gets a small village fief, and then makes military contributions, is promoted to baron, and gets a small town fief. Then his title is Baron of a Town and Lord Knight of a Village, with 2 independent territories. In this way, his eldest son can inherit the title of Baron of a Town, and his second son may inherit the title of Lord Knight of a Village. Of course, most of the time, the eldest son gets all the titles, and the second son goes to war, writes novels, plays the piano, and fawns over aristocratic ladies. The tragedy of the second son is probably the reason why the aristocratic monogamy system can be implemented. Too many wives means more second sons, and the imbalance of enfeoffment will exacerbate the contradiction, leading to the collapse of the knight system. Island replacement. This is a special feudal system of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, which means that the aristocracy can only own one island or one city, and the territory cannot be superimposed. For example, a knight, after becoming a lord knight, gets a small village fief, and then makes military contributions, is promoted to baron, and gets a small town fief. Then he can only choose a small town as the fief, give up the original small village fief, and retain the highest title of Baron of a town. However, there is a considerate strategy to ensure that the interests of the territory will not be harmed. The original territory can be reserved for 3 to 5 years of harvesting, which is used to transfer the elves, population, and other wealth of the territory. When the Tulip family was still surnamed Tile, List's grandfather Greg Tile was a viscount of Tahiti City on an island near the Blue Dragon Island. After Lee William inherited the viscount title, he made a meritorious deed and became count. He chose the Coral Island, and by paying taxes, reserved the Tahiti City for 3 years of harvesting. After the family's property was transferred, the Tahiti City was taken back by the court 3 years later. The reason why this system is adopted is that the Grand Duchy of Sapphire belongs to an archipelago state. There are many islands, few land, and shipping is difficult. If the aristocracy wants to communicate with the two fiefs in the north and south of the country, they would have to spend a lot of resources on the voyage. Therefore, they might as well focus on one island. Thus, the island replacement system was born. However, the system is dead, while people are alive. List wants to rent the flower town for a long time. As long as he pays the money, he believes that Lee William and Levis have no reason to disagree. After all, they are a family. The flower town is the start of my career. Most of the rewards of the smoke missions also originate from the flower town. It might have a special meaning, so I am reluctant to give it up. The flower town is the land of prosperity for him. Although this world does not pay particular attention to the land of prosperity for dragons, but List is still more or less influenced by geomancy and has a bit of a liking for the land of prosperity for dragons. Even without the land of prosperity for dragons, the flower town still has most of the fruits of his hard work, so it is difficult to immediately give it up. Most importantly, the invisible dragon has visited the town. This is one of the clues to the dragon. Perhaps one day, the invisible dragon will visit the town again. Then, List will be able to get in touch with it, strive to ride it one day and become a dragon knight. Isn't that wonderful? On June 11th, he landed on the Iron Hoof Island's Oxhorn City, and on July 14th, he returned to the Oxhorn City. The month-long campaign on the Iron Hoof Island was finally over. List can relax on his bed and enjoy the peace after the war. Chapter 401. Oxhorn City, at night. Heavy rain poured down, mixed with the howling of the wind. Unable to go out, List hid in his room and took inventory of his harvest. Food, minerals, and other spoils of war could not be divided privately. He also did not bring many gold and silver coins. Only in the vicinity of Oxhorn City, he had Marcus find 7 craftsmen and secretly send them to the ship. He called out the smoke mission, which was still in the same serpentines, mission, search for orders of chivalry and goat assembly in progress. Perhaps this is the end of Marquis Ox, but no one knows the final outcome. Please wait patiently for the end of the war. Reward, unknown reward. Perhaps he would have to wait until he returned to the flower town to complete the mission. The spoils of war he had obtained so far were all found in Juniper Castle's study and bedroom. The pink gem inlaid on the neck of the Duchess's portrait in the bedroom was probably derived from the pink gem dragon. List fumbled around and concluded that the pink gem's property was to increase spirit power. So far, he had obtained 4 gems. The red blood sword was inlaid with a ruby, which could increase the effect of chi. The sky cutter greatsword was inlaid with a sapphire, which could increase strength. The sapphire ring he swindled from Curtis Truth, which, in addition to increasing strength, could also increase a wizard's casting effect. Finally, there was the pink gem that could increase spirit power. Gem dragons are dragons that specialize magic power and solidify it in the form of gems, which is equivalent to a magic power converter. List defined gem dragons as such. In his understanding, dragons could be regarded as magic power converters. Metal dragons were matter converters, which converted magic power into metal, elemental dragons were permanent converters, which converted temporary magic power properties into permanent properties. Gem dragons were nature converters, which converted ordinary magic power into special magic power and formed gems. As for sacred dragons, it was hard to say. Of course, it was just a superficial understanding. His understanding of dragons was still very little. The great wizards of Goat Assembly should know a lot. Unfortunately, he had not been able to capture a great wizard, nor had he obtained their books and experimental notes. He tossed the pink gem. List felt that it was undoubtedly an important spoil. It could be used to forge gem equipment, which could increase his spirit power and better control the operation of qi. It could also be given to magicians to use, as magicians required a lot of mental strength. Maybe a qi will like it, except for pink ruby. He also took out a set of silver knight armor. The armor hanging on the wall of the study looked like it was made of mithril. The feel and texture of the armor were exactly the same as the mithril armor he found in the basement of the unnamed castle in Main City. After a while, he announced helplessly, "This is really just a set of mithril armor. There's nothing special about it. Marquis Bull, do you have nothing better to do? Why would you hang a normal mithril armor in your study? This mithril armor was worth 7 or 8 sets of steel armor. Worthless. Even if I don't get a good set of magic equipment, would need at least 7 or 8 gems embedded in it to match my status as a marquis." List was disappointed. Unwilling to give up, he continued to search for the equipment, and soon, he found the reason why the armor was hanging up. On the back shoulder of the armor, there was a small line of serpentines engraved, Iron Knight André Sapphire, completed in the autumn of the year 149, the first set of mithril armor, given to Lord Grandfather. This is the first set of mithril armor made by the grandson of Marquis Bull? List pondered for a moment. This line of text revealed André's talent. According to the information I know, the grandson of Marquis Bull seems to be only 15 years old this year. 3 years ago, he was only 12 years old, and he was able to forge a mithril armor. The Iron Knight was equivalent to the blacksmith of the night, and its status was not very high. But for a 12-year-old child to be able to forge iron so well, one could imagine how powerful his talent in the area of qi training was. This André, as long as he has enough resources, he might be able to become a sky knight before the age of 16. He has the aptitude to ride a dragon. List was very good at thinking. He thought of some kingdoms that had a special knight system, the Dragon Knight Grooming Program. Not everyone in the royal family had the talent to ride a dragon, and most of them had ordinary talent. Therefore, the kingdoms would choose some youngsters with the talent to ride a dragon to groom them, helping them ride a dragon and becoming a powerful barrier for the kingdom. One of the conditions was that one had to become a sky knight before the age of 16. These dragon knights would serve the kingdom, and after their death, they would return the dragon to the kingdom. As for how the dragon knight would be willing to return the dragon, it was unknown. They would probably sign some contract that involved the soul. Maybe Marquis Bull has already sent his grandson to some kingdom to be groomed as a dragon knight? Using all the wealth of the Bull family, he might really be able to take a gamble and groom a dragon knight descendant. Maybe in Marquis Bull's mind, he would be able to watch his grandson become a dragon knight if he became a lich and became immortal. Even the dragon slaying program was one of the conditions for a certain kingdom to agree to let his grandson become a dragon knight. The more List thought about it, the more his imagination ran wild. He even imagined a conspiracy. A certain kingdom, let's say the Eagle Kingdom, in order to deal with the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, sent people to revive the goat gathering and get in touch with Marquis Bull. Using the lich as bait, they enticed Marquis Bull to slay a dragon, and then promised him the benefits of training his grandson to become a dragon knight. Thus, Marquis Bull staked everything on a single throw and decided to slay a dragon. Many things happened now. But very soon, he rejected this idea of a conspiracy. This conspiracy started at least 30 years ago. At that time, Marquis Bull's grandson wasn't even born yet. It can be written in Dragon's Battle in the Wild. I believe it will be fascinating and add a sense of historical gravity. He shook his head. He no longer bothered about where Andre had gone. I'll find a chance to erase this serpentine and use it as an ordinary mithril armor. He put away the armor. All that was left were the books he found in the study. The first book, A Night in the Piano Room with Miss Havana. The title felt a bit ambiguous, but he still read it seriously. Then he was speechless. This was simply a pornographic book, and it was the kind of crude description without any plot. The main character was a down-and-out knight without a noble title. He only knew how to play the piano. He was then hired to teach the daughter of a count how to play the piano. Just because he played the piano well, he and Miss Havana had sex in the piano room. They repeated the actions over and over again. This was a novel of about 30,000 words. Marquis Bull actually likes this. Liz thought for a moment, then found a small hole and cut open the cover. There were no secret techniques hidden inside. In the distant era of the Moon Empire, the great ancient magic shooters slaughtered 8 elemental dragons and used their blood to carve the Dragon Coil magic circle in an attempt to explore the truth of the world. Every sorcerer's heart was stirred by the surging experiment. Every time I think of such a magnificent and incredible act, I feel that it is only natural for human beings to rule the world. Indeed, now it is the knight who has taken over the magician's authority to rule the world. Your Highness, you are a talented knight. However, other than the Dragon Knight, the ones who know the most about dragons are us magicians. I once worked in the wizard tower of the Great Lafayette Truth and saw a vast number of books about dragons. I have read a lot of books about dragons and have also studied the earth dragons of the Hengduan Mountains up close. This incredible creature is worthy of being the embodiment of the essence of magic. Other than elves, no other creature can resonate with them. So, please allow me to explain to you the progress of the Silvermoon Gathering's research on dragons. I hope it will be beneficial for you to become a Dragon Knight, saith Truth. That was all the content of the title page. To be precise, this was a letter written in a book. In the subsequent pages of the book, this mage named Seth Truth recorded a large amount of the research work of the Silvermoon Gathering, all of which revolved around dragons. And it was obvious that this mage had a strong textual organization. All the records were divided into 4 large chapters. The first chapter was about the research on the habitat of dragons. It recorded some rumors about the birth of dragons, as well as stories about the Dragon Knight riding dragons and the Dragon Slayer warriors slaying dragons. It was more varied and mostly unconfirmed rumors. Other than the dragons raised by the kingdom, how the Dragon Knight discovered dragons in the wild was still a mystery. The second chapter was about the research on the diet of dragons. According to different types of dragons, it recorded what each type of dragon liked to eat, how the food was turned into minerals and excreted, how different foods affected the minerals excreted by dragons, as well as the habits and frequency of excretion of dragons. The third chapter was about the production of dragons. How draconic aura, dragon breath, dragon scales, dragon feces, dragon saliva, and so on were transformed into metals and gems. There was not much data recorded in the above 3 chapters. Most of it was guesses and excerpts from the research notes of various countries and generations of mages. The fourth chapter was about the bloodline infection of dragons. This chapter had the most content. It recorded 4 types of high-level dragons, 7 types of mid-level dragons, 26 types of low-level dragons, and more than 50 types of dragon-type wild beasts. Only the research records of the super dragon species in World of Warcraft were lacking. The mages of the Silvermoon Gathering expressed doubts about the existence of the dragon. Dragons, also known as wyverns. The super dragon species in World of Warcraft, also known as dragons. High-level, mid-level, low-level dragons in World of Warcraft, also known as dragons. There were also dragon-type wild beasts. The book put forward a very interesting point of view about the levels that formed the bloodline of dragons. The mages of the Silver Moon Gathering believed that the reason why dragons infected wild beasts and World of Warcraft was actually equivalent to the desire to reproduce. Dragons had no gender. When they were excited, they would release the magic in their bloodline, infecting wild beasts and World of Warcraft and forming a dragon species. So that's how dragons and dragon-type wild beasts came about. Sexless dragons rely on the degree of excitement to determine whether they are willing to infect wild beasts. List thought of the few dragon-type cows on the dairy farm. So, the delicious beef that the invisible dragon ate, coupled with the irresistible smell of smoked grass, made it excited. So it released the magic in its bloodline and infected the cows on the dairy farm. He thought this explanation was more reasonable. Otherwise, there was no way to explain why dragons appeared everywhere and dragon-type wild beasts and dragons were very rare. There must be specific conditions for bloodline infection, and emotional excitement was one of the possible conditions. He closed the book. List solemnly put the book away. Although it was not the Chi's secret skills or the Dragon Slayer Codex that he had imagined, or even the magic-stealing experiments, it was still instructive, allowing List to further understand dragons. Amidst the heavy rain, the Count smoothly arrived at Oxhorn City. After a night's rest, on the morning of July 16, the heavy rain turned into light rain, and the Coral Island fleet began to return. Chapter 403. It took 4 days to sail from Iron Hoof Island to Coral Island, which was enough time for the Knights of Coral Island to distribute the merits. List was also distributing his orders of chivalry's merits. According to the principle of more work, more pay, he was the one who made the most contributions in this battle. Even the Count thought that List's merits were about to catch up with his. Unsurprisingly, the Count was the one who made the most contributions every time Coral Island participated in the battle. It was not only because of his strength, but also because of his status as a lord. The Grand Duke presides over the Merit Conference. In principle, the distribution of supplies is the main focus and the title of nobility is minimized. Because the first prince spoke up for you, you were able to get the title of Viscount and become the only noble to be promoted to Viscount in this battle. List was a little surprised. Am I the only one? It felt a little too high profile, but he enjoyed the thrill of being the most outstanding person in the world. Many of the Sky Knights have performed more meritorious deeds than you, but they are already marquises, earls, or viscounts. It's impossible for you to be promoted from Viscount to Earl with your military achievements in this battle. Among the barons, you have performed the most meritorious deeds, so it's natural for you to be promoted to Viscount. So, father, what price do I have to pay? After you get the title of Viscount, you have almost no share in the distribution of supplies, so you need to subsidize the knights who fought with you. I understand. List nodded. It was a matter of course. The title of Viscount belonged to the middle aristocratic sequence, which was an identity that could not be exchanged for any number of gold coins. An island or city that belonged entirely to him was definitely the foundation of his family for hundreds of years. In other words, he had to compensate the knights for their meritorious deeds. The subsequent calculation of the merit compensation made him breathe a sigh of relief, because no matter how he looked at it, he accounted for most of the merit. Without Dosen, the Black Orders of Chivalry would never have made brilliant contributions, so the compensation standard was not high. It adds up to about 6,000 gold coins. Excluding the spoils that have been privately distributed, I will probably have to add 4,000 gold coins. 4,000 gold coins are within the acceptable range, which is only half a year's revenue share of the flour brew. In reality, the swift shadow bow he had obtained was already worth around 3,000 to 4,000 gold coins. In short, although he had not obtained the right to plunder the spoils of war, he had obtained the title of Viscount, which was enough to satisfy him. Then, he thought, if I become a Viscount, will any of my followers be promoted? He thought about it. It seemed that no one had made outstanding achievements, and this was only the first time they participated in a battle, so it was not advisable for them to advance too quickly. At most, he would list Marcus Wheel and Charles Pitfall as targets for observation, waiting for their next performance in battle. However, when he thought of the fact that his followers would be given land for meritorious deeds, there was always a knot in his heart. Enfeoffment system. I feel very good when I obtain the ownership of land, but I feel very unhappy when I have to give it to others. Should I change the structure of the enfeoffment system a little? With the size of Black Horse Island, under normal circumstances, it is more realistic to enfeoff 2 or 3 baron and a dozen lord knight. But he did not want to enfeoff any land at all. Perhaps, I can refer to the ancient enfeoffment system of China, empty title and remote territory. Empty title, similar to the life knight of this world, but life knight cannot be hereditary. Empty title can be hereditary inheritance, no land, fief, and only enjoy the salary paid by the court. Remote territory, the court designates an area as a fief or designates a certain official position as an identity, but the person does not govern the fief, nor does he really perform the official position, but only in name. Whether it is empty title or remote territory, it gives enough honor, but in essence, there is no real enfeoffment, and all the land still belongs to the court. This system cannot be said to be very advanced, but in the feudal era, it had a very good effect on strengthening centralization and was conducive to national unity. Europe has always been fragmented, but China has always been unified, and it is not without institutional reasons. Soon he calmed down. Now is not the time to solve the enfeoffment system. I am just a small noble, low-key development is the way to go. I will first adapt to the enfeoffment system. Maybe my followers will take the initiative to change the status quo when they see that the development of the territory is not satisfactory. Liszt has the vision and mind of modern people, and with the help of the smoke mission, the land in his hands will definitely be of maximum value. In the hands of his followers, I am afraid that they will still return to the simple farming method of ordinary nobles. Once they are attacked by natural disasters, they may go bankrupt in an instant. If it were other lords and followers, this kind of enfeoffment would not be a problem, and everyone would live like this. But in Flower Town, on Black Horse Island, when the followers see that Liszt's land is becoming more and more prosperous, they will certainly have a lot of ideas. When the time comes, I will guide them a little. I am afraid that without me mentioning it, the followers will take the initiative to integrate into the new system. Calculating the merits made sailing no longer boring. Liszt discussed the merits with his knight followers almost every day to ensure that everyone's demands were satisfactorily addressed. At the same time, he would also get together with his father and brother, have a drink, and then discuss the direction of the family. The Grand Duke did not say what happened between him and the Sapphire Dragon, but the Sapphire Dragon has definitely changed, and the Grand Duke has also changed greatly. I don't know if he has become a Dragon Knight, or a Dragon Field Lord, or something else. His anger is far from subsiding. Lee William briefly explained the meeting in Juniper Castle for his 2 sons' reference. He continued, the Grand Duke's purpose of clearing out Iron Hoof Island is very clear. He wants to take Iron Hoof Island into his hands. Then, with Iron Hoof Island as a reward, he will confer 3 marquises. Iron Hoof Island can barely accommodate 3 marquises. Iron Hoof Island owned by Marquis Bull was the second largest island after Blue Dragon Island. It was almost 3 times the size of the Taro family's Red Crab Island. If Red Crab Island could accommodate 1 marquis, then Iron Hoof Island could naturally accommodate 3 marquises. So, father, you have a chance to fight for the title of marquis? Levis's eyes were burning with excitement. 3 marquis candidates, the probability is very high. When the time comes, our Tulip family will be a marquis family. Not 3 candidates, but 5 candidates. Lee William was also very excited, but he didn't show it. Blue Dragon Island will also allocate 2 large cities and confer 2 marquises to join the Blue Blood Alliance. The marquises of the Blue Blood Alliance certainly didn't live as comfortably as the marquises of fiefs, but a marquis was a marquis, and the benefits they could obtain were far greater than that of a count. Liszt wasn't tempted by the title of marquis. He frowned. So, the Grand Duke is preparing to launch an even more ferocious war? That's right. As long as the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom goes to war with the Eagle Kingdom, the Grand Duke will immediately issue an expansion order to actively expand resources and make up for the deficit brought by Marquis Bull. Militaristic. Can the Grand Duchy of Sapphire support such frequent wars with its national strength? Liszt said calmly, in the Battle of Iron Hoof Island, the losses of the Coral Island orders of chivalry are not small, exceeding the losses of previous expansion orders. We need time to recover. Chapter 404. As the Grand Duchy of Sapphire started from the serf trade, apart from the initial group of followers, most of the commoners in the country and the knight born among the commoners actually originated from the serfs they had plundered and purchased. After generations of living, the descendants of these serfs had recognized the identity of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. However, in order to continue to consolidate the sense of identity, the successive Grand Dukes refused to accept prisoners of war. The loyalty and identity of the captured knight were obstacles. Moreover, there was a lack of knight in the country. Once the door was opened, a large number of prisoners of war would pour into the country, leading to a loss of national identity. Without a sense of identity, the country would no longer be a country, and an aristocratic rebellion could occur at any time. Just like the Coral Island where Liszt grew up, the number of Earth Knights was estimated to be just over 1,000. Every time the Earth Knight was mobilized, only 500 or 600 would be mobilized. In the campaign to encircle and suppress Iron Hoof Island, 700 Earth Knights were mobilized, which was already the limit. The number of Earth Knight casualties reached 200. In particular, more than half of the Grey Orders of Chivalry led by Viscount Jonas were killed. Fortunately, the Earth Knight had a tenacious vitality and could survive serious injuries. Otherwise, the casualties would have been even greater. Once the door was opened for prisoners of war, it could be imagined how many foreign Earth Knights the Count would recruit in order to replenish the troops. The treatment of foreign Earth Knights would certainly be far inferior to that of local Earth Knights. As long as they could ensure that there would be no rebellion, recruiting foreign Earth Knights would soon become mainstream. When the Coral Island was flooded with foreign knights, it could be imagined that their thinking would rapidly change. The knight might continue to be loyal to the Tulip family, but they had no good impression of the Sapphire family that started the war. The sense of national identity would quickly fall. As one of the greater aristocrats, Lee William was not blind to this situation, but he still gladly accepted it. The reason was very simple. No matter how much national identity was lost, as long as his power as an aristocrat was not lost, it was fine. What was truly shaken was only the authority of the Sapphire family. Liszt could not help but ask, why would the Grand Duke make such a decision? That's because the Archduke doesn't care. He believes that he can suppress everything. This can be determined from the draconic might emanating from his body. In fact, I have a guess that the Archduke might have already used Marquis Bull's attempt to assassinate a dragon to complete the most important process of riding a dragon. The Count paused. He may have become a dragon knight, and he is not satisfied with the state of the country. Speaking of the dragon knight, the Count looked outside the cabin, a little lost in thought. Levis continued, moreover, the Grand Duchy of Sapphire needs war to boost morale and warn the other countries not to think that the Grand Duchy of Sapphire has fallen. His father and brother's analysis made sense. Liszt didn't say anything else, but he had a feeling that the Sapphire Grand Duke was drinking poison to quench his thirst. After returning to his room, he silently pondered for a moment. If the Grand Duke wants to boost morale, it won't do me any harm. On the contrary, I can take the opportunity to obtain more military merits and strengthen myself. If the Grand Duke drinks poison to quench his thirst, by the time the country collapses, I will probably have the power to protect myself and won't be affected. List even thought. If the country doesn't fall into chaos, how can I take advantage of the situation to rise? How can I snatch the Dragon Knight Chi secret manual? On the morning of July 21st. After 4 days of drifting, the fleet returned to Coral Island smoothly. After learning that the orders of chivalry had returned, Tulip Castle became lively for the first time in a long time. Madame Marie, along with Lytton and the castle's steward and servants, greeted them on the road on the hillside of the castle. Madame Penelope and Elvira also set off from the small castle in Coral City and came to wait on the road. The aristocrats of Coral City also rushed over when they learned of the news. The sky had just cleared after the rain. There was still some water on the stone-paved road, but this didn't stop the enthusiasm of the welcoming team. The cheers could be heard from afar. List rode on the back of a chocobo, wearing a simple inner shirt and leather armor. The sky-cutter greatsword hung at his waist and the swift shadow bow on his back. It was difficult to find a suitable word to describe him other than handsome. He always paid attention to his appearance. Even on the ship, he would carefully take care of his appearance. By keeping himself dry and clean every day, not only would he look energetic to outsiders, but most importantly, he would also be confident. Dosun's wounds had already healed. Returning to the familiar Coral Island, he was in good spirits, circling around the night team for a while. Loki, on the other hand, was in high spirits. He might be a little seasick, but fortunately, the powerful resilience of a low-level dragon allowed him to maintain basic riding ability. This is the treatment of a hero's return. I used to always stand in the welcoming team, but now I like the feeling of a triumphant return. Levis was also in high spirits, riding side by side with List. Seeing the stability of my home, a sense of accomplishment overflows my chest. Perhaps this is the mission of a knight. He was speaking from the bottom of his heart. A knight fought for the territory, while the subjects provided for the knight. Each had their own lives and paths, complementing each other. List nodded. I hope we can see the cheering welcoming team again and again. We will. The knight walked on the road that branched off from Tulip Castle to Coral City. Most of them would continue to walk towards Coral City, where they would disperse and return to their homes. List and the other aristocrats headed towards Tulip Castle, where they would enjoy their first banquet after returning to Tulip Castle. The Count walked at the front of the team. After seeing Madame Penelope, he immediately dismounted, walked quickly to her, and bowed deeply. Mother, I made you worry. My son, Lee William Tulip, I know that you will return triumphantly every time. Levis and List also dismounted and quickly walked to Madame Penelope, grandmother. Tulip family's strong youngsters, seeing you return safely, my restless heart is at ease. Madame Penelope hugged the two of them in relief. Despite the hardships of living in the open, you can clearly take care of yourselves. Your bodies are still so strong. The relatives greeted and cared for each other. Even though he had integrated into this world and the Tulip family, List still felt uncomfortable. However, he restrained his emotions and fully immersed himself in this moment. After the greetings were over, the team gathered and continued to walk towards Tulip. List dispatched a retainer knight to the flower town to deliver a message that he was safe. He planned to return in the afternoon and not spend the night in Tulip. He really missed the flower town and couldn't wait to rush back, to return to the land that truly belonged to him. Sir Baron, I want to return to the flower town first. I miss my sister very much. Paris said to List while riding Black Dragon. List did not refuse. All right. After returning to the Coral Island, he no longer needed Paris's personal protection. At the luncheon. After mourning the fallen knight, the atmosphere quickly became enthusiastic. Every time they went to war, someone would die. The knight had long since adapted to parting. After coming back alive, they would inevitably choose to celebrate to their heart's content. The atmosphere of the banquet was high. Levis suddenly stood up and clapped his hands. Everyone, I need to announce the news. In the Battle of Iron Hoof Island, we have achieved a brilliant victory. On the Coral Island, a new Viscount will be born. My younger brother, List Tulip. Clatter, the applause was thunderous. List nodded to the people around him. Levis waited for the applause to stop and said with a smile, "In 3 days, the title ceremony will be held in Tulip Castle. Let us witness the glorious moment of List." Everyone raised their glasses. Cheers to Viscount List. Cheers to List. Cheers to Sir Viscount. My glory, I would like to share with you. Picking up the glass and seeing all the nobles around him raise their glasses to him, List smiled and shook the glass in front of him. Then he raised his head and drank the spicy flower wine in the glass. Chapter 405. 3 days from now, be ready to receive your glory at the conferring ceremony. I understand, Father. After the luncheon, List did not delay. He left Tulip Castle and set off for Flower Town. He drank a lot of wine and was slightly tipsy, but he could still stay sober. The chocobo Loki had recovered. Its soft feathers and wide back made List very comfortable to sit on. He spat out a mouthful of foul air and summoned the smoke mission. It was strange. He moved at high speed on the chocobo's back, but the smoke serpentines were fixed in front of him. Mission completed. Reward, decaying dragon bones recovery. After he saw the content of the reward, he unconsciously frowned. After a while, he stared at the smoke serpentines that had turned into a new mission. The Siren Acloids has accumulated a large number of magic problems that need to be solved urgently. These problems are related to her understanding of magic and the improvement of her own magic level. Please solve them. Reward, a Water Master Magician. His eyes were looking at the serpentines. His mind was thinking about the previous mission reward, decaying dragon bones recovery. He didn't know if it was because of the alcohol, but his brain was a little slow. It took a lot of effort to get into the right state. Dragon bones? Recovery? Decaying? Is this referring to the 5 dragon bones in the Black Horse Island's burial ground? The 5 decaying dragon bones in the burial ground had been exposed to the wind and the sun. List knew that they were definitely not ordinary, but he still couldn't figure out what was so extraordinary about them. Now it seemed that the 5 dragon bones were finally going to change. What does recovery mean? He pondered over the smoke mission reward, a little confused. According to the literal meaning, it should refer to the return of spring, the revival of all things, the recovery of the decaying dragon bones. Does it mean that these bones will come back to life, like withered trees? The recovery of the dragon bones, is it simply the recovery of the bones, or? A bold idea suddenly flashed in his mind. This fire dragon that has been dead for who knows how many years, will it also slowly recover with the recovery of the bones? Can a dragon come back to life? He had never heard of such a possibility. List thought of another possibility. Or maybe it's not that the fire dragon came back to life. Maybe it's the remnants of its magic, relying on the decaying dragon bones to give birth to a new fire dragon? He remembered a legend. At the end of their lives, the old dragons would leave the place where they lived and fly to the legendary Valley of Dragons, where they would sleep. Perhaps the reason why the dragons return to the Valley of Dragons after they grow old is to find a place to prepare for their resurrection? Because dragons had no gender and could not give birth, its birth had always been a mystery. That was why List had such a conjecture: resurrection, a cycle. After pondering for a long time, Zhang Xian was unable to come up with a better solution. He restrained himself from fantasizing too much. It's just the recovery of 5 bones, don't simply associate it with dragons. Maybe the smoke mission only told me that fire dragon bones can be used to build ships. I haven't had the time to ask Virginia if she knows how to fix dragon bones. No more thinking about the dragon. The 5 fire dragon bones needed to be inspected after returning. His attention returned to the new smoke mission. The mission prompted a chi to accumulate a large number of magic problems that needed to be solved, and the reward was a water archmage. This was easy to understand. Chi was about to be promoted to a water archmage. Not bad, she did not disappoint me. Chi has become a archmage in less than half a year, her talent is terrifying. In a few years, I'm afraid she really has hope of becoming a water archmage. The sun scorched the earth. The chocobos brought with them gusts of wind as they flew, keeping List cool. The tipsiness gradually dissipated under the constant wearing down of Qi, and his brain regained its vitality. When the sun was about to set, the Thorns Ridge, which was planted with dense iron thorns, was already in sight. And on the main gravel road, there was already a team waiting to greet him. When List discovered the team also discovered List and his party. Cheers immediately sounded. Even though they were several hundred meters away, they could still be clearly heard. They were shouting, "Sir Viscount." The messenger retainer knight had already spread the news that List was about to be promoted to Viscount. One could imagine how excited and seething the fief's officials were under Gort's leadership. Everyone knew that List had a great future, but no one expected that he would become a Viscount in a year. Clop clop clop. The sound of hooves whistled as the team entered the main road of the Thorns Ridge. Sure enough, the people to greet him were the officials led by Gort, as well as a large number of fief's residents. They crowded on the roadside, craning their necks in anticipation, wanting to catch a glimpse of the great Sir Lord. "Oh, the knight is graced by glory, incredible!" Gort shouted in his unique exaggerated tone, "Great Lord, Viscount List. Sir, I, Gort, offer my highest respect to you." The fief's officials behind him greeted and complimented List's return with all kinds of greetings. The afterglow of the setting sun sprinkled on List's face, making his handsome and extraordinary figure even more imposing. A genial voice sounded, "I accept your greetings, let's go back to the castle first." "Yes, sir." The group of people clustered around List and walked towards the castle. He was the focus of everyone's eyes. Loki was also the focus of attention. His colorful feathers and tall and slightly strange body made ordinary people marvel. In the world of Warcraft, people's aesthetic standards were not those of kittens or puppies. The stranger and more powerful the creature, the more crazily they would be pursued by humans. This is Sir Lord. Such a terrifying giant bird is Sir Lord's mount. The townsfolk ran behind the team, whispering to each other as they ran. It may be mid-level World of Warcraft. Sir Lord's Dosen is mid-level World of Warcraft. Sir Lord also killed the mid-level sea monster Six-Headed Sea Serpent King. The fief's residents nodded in agreement. Yes, it is not mid-level, Sir Lord doesn't care about it at all. Sir Lord is already a Viscount. Do you think North Valley City will be given to Sir Lord? I don't know, maybe Sir Lord can have an island, just like Sir Viscount of Beer Island. Yes, when Sir Lord first came to Flower Town last year, I said that he was born a greater aristocrat and would obtain countless honors sooner or later. These whispers. List did not hear it. The officials around him were still flattering him, not knowing that he was not in the mood to listen to flattery at the moment. He just wanted to go back to the castle and drink a cup of fresh milk tea brewed by Mrs. Morrison. Mrs. Morrison must already be brewing milk tea. She knows that my favorite is milk tea brewed with dragon milk. Even if she forgets, Mr. Carter will remind her. After a year together, Carter, Morrison, and the other servants have become like family. Before List set foot on Dosen Avenue, he suddenly raised his head and looked ahead. Accompanied by a cry of, "Wow," the familiar thorn fairy Ella flew up and down. When it saw List, it looked very happy and landed directly on List's head. Sprites are emotional creatures, and the existence of the contract made him closer to Ella. "Little fellow, did you demolish the castle?" List beckoned Ella to his palm and continued to ride the chocobo towards the castle. "Wow." Chapter 406. Ella, stop. List stopped the naughty Ella, and then pulled off the green thorn seedlings on Loki's head before the thorns could grow. The green light on his head was fleeting. Loki didn't know what was going on and shouted meaninglessly, "Cluck." They continued to walk. Dosen Avenue was smoother, and on both sides of the road were more and more lush apple circles. Because they had just been transplanted this year, there were no apples. But the apple tree was covered with small green apples, and it was obvious that it had grown at least twice as big. The branches and leaves stretched out, propping up a shade. Tables, benches, and rocking chairs were neatly placed under the tree. Woo! Woo! Ella flew to the apple tree, holding a green apple and shaking it. The apple did not fall to the ground, but it had obviously become Ella's plaything. It liked to fall on it and swing. Soon they came to the castle gate. Butler Carter was standing on both sides of the gate with all the servants of the castle, divided into men and women. Watching the tall and handsome List jump off the back of the chocobo, he immediately stepped forward and said in a familiar thick steel voice, "Master, welcome home." Mrs. Morrison also smiled on behalf of the maid and said, "Master, welcome home." "Yes, we're home." He wanted to express his triumphant mood again, but a barking interrupted the atmosphere. 8 big dogs with shiny black fur rushed over like a swarm of bees and pounced on Trembling Woods and List. Woof woof. It was the 8 little ones. After more than a month, the 8 blizzard beasts had grown a lot, exceeding the size of a large wolf dog. Woof woof. Trembling Woods had probably been separated for a long time, so it didn't like his sons that were pouncing on him. It barked a few times and drove them away. On the other side, it was Stupid Woman who came late, calling to Dosen, "Woof woof." Dosen immediately rushed over enthusiastically and mingled with Stupid Woman, wagging his tail. Now, both Stupid Woman and the 8 little ones could move freely. Storm, flame, rock, wave, thunder, light, ice, shadow, get into formation. List ordered with a straight face. However, the 8 little ones only cared about playing and were indifferent to his orders. It even roared at Loki the chocobo, attempting to attack the long-legged, long-necked, fat bird. Loki jumped around, avoiding the entanglement of the 8 little ones. Clatter! Clatter! The scene was chaotic and chaotic. The triumphant atmosphere that had just been created was completely destroyed. The servants hurriedly came forward to stop the 8 little ones, but there were too many people today. The 8 little ones were a little too excited and couldn't be stopped. One of the waves even opened its mouth and released a rock spike to attack Loki. Loki was good at running but not good at fighting, so he could only be beaten passively. Clatter! At the critical moment, List shouted with a gloomy face, "Dosen!" Dosen instantly abandoned Stupid Woman and rushed over. "Woof woof! Press down these 8 mad dogs for me." List made a subduing gesture and with the command, immediately let Dosen understand what he needed to do. Turning around, Trembling Woods swiftly and violently attacked. Waves, who was the loudest, was sent tumbling by a slap from Trembling Woods. After it stopped, it lay on the ground, whimpering and not daring to move. After subduing the wave, Dosen continued to violently subdue the rock, light, and ice. Finally, the 8 little ones were obedient. They all lay on the ground and did not dare to move. They were still obedient to Dosen. This was a blood relationship and fear of the strong of the same kind. "Come, tie up these 8 mad dogs, plus Stupid Woman, and tie them to their respective kennels." List was a little angry. More than a month without training, it's a complete mess. It seems that the castle has suffered a lot from them during this time. "Mr. Carter, has anyone been injured because of them? After all, it is World of Warcraft. Once it goes crazy, it is difficult to control." When he first went on the expedition, List thought that his training was effective and that the 8 little ones would only listen to the servants who raised them. Now it seems that this is not the case. Mr. Carter sighed. "Today is the day of your triumphant return. I didn't expect to report these things. In fact, in the second week of your expedition, the 8 little blizzard beasts were a little restless. In the next 2 weeks, they learned to release rock thorns one after another, and it was difficult to manage them. As a result, the 8 blizzard beasts were kept in the kennel and never released. But they successfully escaped a few days ago and began to plunder with the castle as the center. Yesterday, they even rushed to the residential area of the town and injured several people. Barton, the coachman, was pierced in the calf by a rock thorn. Although he survived, one of his legs was disabled for life. Several members of the town patrol were also injured and disabled. If it weren't for the magician Chris Truth, more people might have been injured. It's my mistake. List exhaled. Do a good job of compensating Barton and the injured patrol members. Don't be stingy. Make a list of the losses caused by the blizzard beasts outside the castle, and all of them will be directly compensated by the castle. In addition, build a separate shack for Loki. Yes, my lord. He turned again and said to Gort and other officials, I am sleepy today. The dinner will be held as usual and there will be no official business. You will sort out the official business of Flower Town and report to me in detail tomorrow. In addition, prepare to raise 4,000 gold coins, which I urgently need. 3 days later, it will be the day when he is promoted to Viscount. From Viscount onwards, he officially enters the ranks of middle-level nobles. At this time, the finances between the castle and the territory need to be gradually separated to prevent confusion in the accounts, because viscounts have the power to enfeoff nobles, which is equivalent to establishing a simple bureaucratic system. Gort responded, As you wish, my lord. Then disperse. I will have a feast with you at the dinner and talk about the Battle of Iron Hoof Island. List sent everyone away directly. He was ready to put aside all the troubles and have a good rest. After making sure that all the blizzard beasts were locked in the kennel and that Loki had adapted to the new environment, he walked into the castle. Mrs. Mawson handed him the milk tea that had been brewed. He drank it all in one gulp. The familiar taste, the familiar feeling, quickly calmed his depression because of the rebellion of the 8 little ones. He had planned to hide in the study and use meditation to adapt to life back in Flower Town. But he soon remembered that he had not yet gone to visit the Siren Chi to complete his task. So he rode Loki and quickly ran to the sea. The seaside villa had always been taken care of. He went into the room and blew the horn. There was no response for a long time. Chi was probably not around here and may have gone to other places. Come back at night. Unable to find Chi, List went straight to the magic workshop. His potions had run out and now he needed to replenish them, otherwise he would interrupt the process of taking potions. Although it was not a big problem to interrupt for a period of time, he still hoped that the path of cultivation would be perfect. Sir Baron, congratulations on your triumphant return. The host of the magic workshop, Chris Truth, has become accustomed to life in Flower Town. The delicious food is very rich and she has grown a little fatter. Chapter 407. From the magic workshop, List took out the potions that he had recently hoarded and went back to take more potions. The castle kitchen was busy preparing for the banquet. Butler Carter was ready to report on the recent work, but List refused. Let's talk tomorrow, I don't want to talk about work today. He was not a workaholic. After fighting for more than a month, he just wanted to relax. Let Mrs. Morrison make me another cup of milk tea. I'm going to rest in the study for a while. If last year's saltpeter can still be used, make some frozen juice. If it can't be used, take some crushed ice from the icehouse. Yes, master. A moment later, the milk tea was brought over. As for the frozen juice, it would take some time to make. List suddenly asked, Is Mr. Elkson in Flower Town? Mr. Elkson came once a week. If you want, you can inform the caravan to convey the news of your return. Inform him for me. Okay. When the frozen juice was also brought over, List closed the door of the study and tasted the frozen juice to get rid of the heat. It was already July, the hottest month of the year. Without ice, life would be full of helplessness. He sat in the rocking chair, rocked, and let his thoughts drift. But soon, he felt bored. From the gem space, he took out the soul storage jar that looked like a teapot. Virginia Truth has been awake for a long time. I've been busy with the war and haven't had time to talk to her again. Now that he had free time, he wanted to talk to Virginia and ask her to give him the keel technique. Tilting the teapot, a wisp of smoke was poured out, and in a blink of an eye, it formed a human upper body. It was Virginia Truth, the majestic 36D ghost that he had seen before. We meet again, Virginia. Should I call you Miss Virginia or Your Excellency Virginia? List said as he looked at Virginia's eyes that were gradually becoming clearer. It seems that I had a long, long dream. Sir, you already know my identity. I am the magician of the goat family, Virginia Truth. I died in an accident. Virginia bowed slightly and looked at her body. Was I sealed in the keel anchorage? Yes, I fished you out of the wreck of a dragon beast sailboat, List said. Virginia nodded and said calmly, I remember now. It was Curtis Truth who killed me. After that, I lost my memory, but I think Curtis Truth used some evil method to extract my soul and seal it in the keel anchorage. Thank you for releasing me from my slumber, sir. List smiled. My name is List Tulip, Baron of Flower Town, and I am about to become Viscount of Black Horse Island. Viscount List. How is the magic goat family? My sister, Curtis Truth, have you heard of her? She should have unified the goat gathering. How is His Highness Annette Sapphire? Virginia asked. She probably thought that she had just died. List coughed. List didn't have the heart to tell the poor lady what happened to her, but there was no point in lying. He said, the magic goat family, about 100 years ago, was annihilated by the third-generation Sapphire Grand Duke because they participated in the palace coup. What? The magician made of smoke and light trembled, and the light flickered. Just when List thought she was going to faint again and retract into the soul storage, her body finally stabilized, but her tone was still uncertain. More than 100 years ago? Viscount List, are you lying to me? I don't need to lie to you. You are just a remnant soul living in my soul storage. In fact, I am not very curious about what happened more than 100 years ago. The magic goat family is like a ship sinking into the sea. If it wasn't for the sudden collision, no one would have known about this family. More than 100 years. No one remembers this. Virginia took a few deep breaths. Even in the soul state, he could still clearly see the violent rise and fall of her chest. I'm sorry, Viscount List, I lost my composure. I didn't know I had been sleeping for 100 years. It's okay. Can you tell me what happened to the magic goat family? If you know about it, can you tell me? This request was not too much, and Virginia, in the soul state, was also a good person to talk to. He could talk about the past with her, and after familiarizing himself with her, he could get the dragon bone technique. In order to help His Highness Annette, your sister Curtis and Marquis Cohen decided to seize the life of the dragon gem dragon. They wanted to turn His Highness Annette into the Dragon Lord? Yes, but it was all in vain. The second-generation Grand Duke found out and personally destroyed the magic goat family. The second-generation Grand Duke was also injured in the battle and abdicated to the third-generation Grand Duke Annette. By the way, is Annette Annette's brother or younger brother? Younger brother. The third-generation Grand Duke banished Annette's soul. Your sister probably escaped. She did not take revenge, but studied lich experiments, and finally transformed herself into a lich. She sacrificed a large number of lives of magicians and civilians to turn the goat into a ghost ship and sail to the land of exile. Lich, ghost ship, land of exile. Virginia muttered to herself, she is really a terrible woman. Because of her own love, the whole family was buried with her. This is just some superficial information that I know. Then, as Curtis' sister, can you tell me about the situation in that era? Virginia nodded, her eyes immersed in reminiscence. After a while, she slowly opened her mouth and told the story of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire more than 100 years ago. It was a prosperous era. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire was booming in the development of sea transportation, and the Magic Goat family also followed the trend. After the Sapphire family developed the three-masted sailboat technology, the Magic Goat family developed the Dragon Bone technique and gave birth to the Goat Assembly, a magician organization. The original purpose of the Goat Assembly was to train magicians for the family and participate in the production of dragon sailboats. My father was Cohen Magic Goat, the Grand Duchy's Marquis. Curtis was my cousin. She grew up with me. Her magic talent was the pride of the family. At the age of 16, she had become a great magician. Her love with Royal Highness Annette was blessed by everyone. Virginia's voice was low and erratic, and I was just an inconspicuous member of the family. Marriage and shipbuilding were probably all my life. I never left the city of thousand sails. I grew up there, lived there, worked there, and studied magic. That was my happiest time, until one day, Curtis came. She asked all of us to stop what we were doing and cooperate with her in some cruel experiments. She wanted us to secretly study the Sapphire Dragon. We didn't want to, so my teacher expelled her from the Goat Assembly. She massacred those who disobeyed. I can't imagine that she would do anything to me. Then. And that was the end of Virginia's story. She was dead. So, you know the Dragon Bone technique? Liszt asked. Chapter 408. Then, Liszt hesitated. He planned to ask about the keel-fixing technique after getting familiar with her, but he felt that the other party was just a remnant soul in his hands. There was no need to be so complicated. Therefore, he paused and said directly, "Can you give me the keel-fixing technique?" Virginia was stunned for a moment. Yes, but, Viscount Liszt, more than 100 years have passed, has the keel-fixing technique not been popularized? I remember that my family had already exchanged technology with the Sapphire family. We obtained the three-masted sailboat manufacturing technology, and the Sapphire family obtained the keel-fixing technique. Has there been an exchange of technology? Liszt was a little surprised by her straightforwardness. I'm not very clear. I know very little about the shipbuilding technology that the Sapphire family has mastered. However, I hope to have my own technical reserves to build a dragon-shaped sailboat in the future. Thank you for giving me the keel-fixing technique. It's nothing. I should thank you for releasing me from oblivion so that I could get a moment of freedom. It's just a pity that things remain the same, but people have changed. The Magic Goat family has disappeared for more than 100 years. What are you going to do next? I don't know. The atmosphere was a little silent. The sorcerer made of smoke and light had a lifelike expression of confusion. For the memory she had just been killed by Curtis, and her thoughts were still in the era of money more than 100 years ago. But the reality was that the Magic Goat family had disappeared, and she had become a lonely remnant soul. In this world, none of the people she knew existed. The strong contrast made her confused and at a loss. Liszt also did not know how to comfort her. He asked, "How does it feel to live in a soul storage tank?" He was ready to use a research attitude to resolve the awkward atmosphere. It just so happened that he also wanted to know what kind of situation Virginia was in the soul state. The independent existence of the soul, in the eyes of the Liszt before the time travel, was absolutely impossible, but now he had to accept this fact and improve his knowledge. The physical rules of this world were very different from the physical rules of Earth. Virginia woke up from her confusion, thought for a moment, and replied, "It's like falling asleep. There seems to be a lot of dreams that keep appearing, but after coming out, I can't remember anything." Liszt could not understand what kind of state this was, but he had a basic understanding. It was probably entering a state similar to hibernation. He then asked, "Then how long can you stay outside in your current soul state?" "I can probably stay a little longer. I don't feel tired yet." "How about this? For the time being, you will be my personal magic consultant. I will keep you by my side. If you have the chance, you can see the outside world. You will have a lot of time to think about the future of your life. After all, you will probably be living like this for a long time." "I see." Virginia did not refuse. "Thank you, Viscount Liszt." Liszt smiled and asked again, "In this state, can you touch objects that exist in reality, such as this book? Can you open it?" Virginia was currently hovering above the desk. She bent down and read the night novel titled The Mad Swordsman Samet Sunflower. He slowly reached out and touched the book. However, her hands could not really touch anything. I don't think I can do it." "How about using your spiritual power?" Liszt suggested. He remembered that ghosts could attack people. Since they could attack humans, it meant that they still had the ability to touch objects. In addition, whether it was Lich Curtis Truth or Lich Andy Sapphire, they were similar to souls, but they could control objects. He did not know what was the difference between the current Virginia and the Lich, and why her soul could exist while the souls of other dead people could not. These were all his future research topics. If he had the time, energy, and strength, he would figure it all out. Listening to Liszt's suggestion, Virginia began to use her spiritual power to try to open the book. Mages would train their spiritual power. They might not necessarily have a big advantage over a knight. After all, a knight also trained his mind to control the circulation of combat energy every day, but compared to an ordinary mage, his spiritual power was much stronger. At first, Virginia stared for a long time, but the night novel did not move at all. However, as Virginia's body began to shine, the night novel flipped from beginning to end like a strong wind. The other night novels on the table also flipped the pages. However, it only lasted for less than 10 seconds before the power disappeared and everything returned to normal. Virginia's face showed a tired expression, and she gasped, "Viscount Liszt, I feel very tired. I can't hold on any longer. Your spiritual control needs to be trained. After training, you should be able to control some objects with your mind." Liszt commented, and then said, "Since you are tired, go into the soul storage tank and rest. By the way, can you come out of the soul storage tank by yourself? I don't think I can do it. After I go in, I feel like I'm asleep and can't do anything." "Oh." Watching Virginia turn into smoke again and shrink into the soul storage tank, Liszt was very satisfied with the effect of this special magic equipment, especially the effect that the soul could not come out by itself. He put it into the gem space. The dinner party began immediately. The atmosphere of the dinner party was quite warm. In the dining hall on the first floor, the town officials, the members of the night squad, Paris, and Chris were all present. The plot was the same as in Tulip Castle. First, they mourned the death of the two Earth Knights, and then they drank wine and boasted to each other. The members of the night squad who participated in the battle were all in high spirits, bragging about their performance on the battlefield, such as piercing 4 enemies with a long spear, killing the elite soldiers with a spear, breaking the big sword with a long spear, and shooting the enemy's throat with an arrow in the midst of the chaos. Of course, when these Earth Knights were bragging about themselves, they did not forget to flatter Liszt's performance on the battlefield. "His Excellency is invincible. His Excellency rode a chocobo with a blizzard beast, no one dared to charge. Like a light, His Excellency guides us forward." Liszt sipped his beer lightly and did not speak much. He never liked to be too active at banquets. In Tulip Castle, many nobles kept toasting, and it was difficult not to respond. Here, he was the only lord, and everyone else was a follower, so he could reduce the number of times he drank. Or, like most leaders, he could take a sip. The banquet lasted until 11:00 in the evening. After the banquet, Liszt told the butler Carter and left the castle directly to the sea. Chapter 409. The Sea View Villa is equipped with crystal lamps, which Liszt set up to make it easier for the siren He to read books. When he came to the Sea View Villa and opened the door, he clearly smelled a faint fragrance in the room, which was the familiar body fragrance of He. However, there was no He in the room. She must have thought that the arrival of Liszt was a castle servant who came to clean the room and hid. Liszt stood in front of the window and blew a small horn. In a moment, using magic eyes, he saw a huge shell swimming from the sea into the room on the first floor. Then the shell opened a gap, and after seeing Liszt standing at the top of the stairs, it quickly opened, revealing He wrapped in water ribbons. The siren was still so beautiful and lively. "Brother!" He shouted excitedly, and the shell carried her directly to the top of the stairs and threw herself into Liszt's arms. He misses brother so much. With the soft jade in his arms, Liszt only felt that he was holding a large elf, and her full chest was squeezed. Even with the obstruction of the water ribbons and soaking his clothes, he could still feel the suffocating pressure. He couldn't help but hug He a little tighter and carry her back to the study. After a while, He let go of her hands, restrained her excitement, blinked her big eyes, and looked at Liszt with a smile. "Long time no see, He." "Well, He looks forward to brother coming back every day." "Does brother also think of He every day?" "Of course I think of He every day, He is so cute." Liszt rubbed her blue hair, and she immediately, like a kitten, burrowed into Liszt's arms and sat in a chair with him. In other words, Liszt sat in a chair, and He sat in his arms. A petite figure of at most 1.55 meters, in the arms of Liszt, who was more than 1.85 meters tall, she really looked like a kitten. However, although He was petite, her figure was exquisite and curvy, which made people can't help but have wild thoughts. Liszt could not help but feel a little hot. He is just a siren who doesn't understand human emotions. She's not an adult yet, so I shouldn't let my imagination run wild. Even though it was hard for him not to think of some scenes that made his mouth dry up while they were hugging each other, he still restrained his impulse. He told He some interesting stories about the Battle of Iron Hoof Island, bragging about his brilliance and martial prowess. "He, how's your progress in magic while I'm away?" he asked. He has already completely mastered the water magic of the magician stage. Water arrow volley, water will wall, water bullet, water whirlpool, and water spring can be instantly released. However, the water wave shield that only great magicians can master, He still hasn't been able to release it. He said with some annoyance. The water wave shield was provided by Chris Truth. Although she was not a great magician, she had a great magician teacher, so she had mastered several high-level magic casting methods. Naturally, Liszt effortlessly obtained the casting plan and handed it over to He. "Tell me all the difficulties you've encountered, and I'll ask other magicians," said Liszt. At present, the town not only had Chris, the magician of the goat gathering, but also Virginia Truth, the private magic consultant. A magician from the magic goat family should know a lot. He left Liszt's arms, took out a book from the cabinet in the study, and handed it to Liszt. "Brother, write down all the questions I don't understand in this notebook." Taking the notebook, Liszt flipped through it. The handwriting in the first half was crooked and ugly, but the handwriting in the second half was more and more beautiful, and there were many special magic symbols. It had to be said that Chi's magic talent was outstanding, and so was her drawing talent. "I'll ask other magicians and help you answer them as soon as possible." Putting away the notebook that he couldn't understand, Liszt asked again, "Chi, where's Nami? Isn't she with you?" Nami was a mangrove elf. Chi said with a smile, "Nami is on Mangrove Island." Mangrove Island has hatched a lot of ducklings. Nami likes those ducklings very much. She catches green caterpillars to feed the ducklings every day and sleeps with them. How many adult mallards are there on Mangrove Island, and how many hatched ducklings are there? There are 25 adult ducks and 44 hatched ducklings. There are still many duck eggs that haven't hatched yet. Hearing so many, List's heart was burning. Mallards were low-level World of Warcraft, and they were the source of a large amount of World of Warcraft meat. Won't those mallards attack Nami? Not at all. The adult ducks just look for green caterpillars on Mangrove Island to eat. They don't care about their eggs and hatched ducklings. It's Nami who feeds the ducklings. Those eggs, were they hatched by adult mallards? Achi shook her head. No, they split open by themselves after being exposed to the sun. World of Warcraft mallards were obviously not ordinary ducks and didn't need to be hatched. Do they only eat green caterpillars? They also go to the beach to eat shrimps and crabs. They also eat mangrove leaves and small wild fruits. After listening to Achi's detailed description, List basically understood that mallards were an omnivorous low-level World of Warcraft that could be raised. Artificial breeding was very feasible, but at the same time, artificial breeding of green caterpillars was also needed. It was the green caterpillars that attracted the mallards to settle here. Of course. The breeding technique would definitely take a long time to figure out. After all, it was World of Warcraft that could spit water arrows, which was very dangerous. So Achi, do you often go to the atoll? Did you find any bigger giant clams in the Black Pearl Lake? List asked again. The atoll was the coral reef that disappeared during high tide. The enclosed sea was called the Black Pearl Lake. Naturally, the giant clams that produced black pearls were called black pearl giant clams. I often go to play, but there are no bigger giant clams in the Black Pearl Lake. When they open their mouths, I have checked them one by one. There are no black pearls that are too big. They are much smaller than the black pearl that brother gave Achi. Achi magically took out a black pearl the size of a fist. She held the black pearl and said, Achi has been practicing the construction of magic circles with black pearls every day recently. Very good. In addition to learning how to cast magic, you can try to study magic circles. In the future, you can not only fight, but also produce potions and make magic equipment. Yes. It was already midnight when he left the Sea View Villa. He was going to give Achi's magic notebook to Chris to answer, but looking at the time, he decided not to disturb her. Maybe she was already asleep. Early the next morning, he sent a servant to give the magic notebook to Chris. Tell Chris to try to finish the answers as soon as possible. If there are parts that she can't answer, just skip them. If she couldn't answer, List would ask Virginia. Later. He was eating breakfast while listening to the butler Carter's report on what happened in the castle this month. There were no problems that he needed to deal with, so he could skip them. After breakfast, he gathered Marcus and the other knight, plus consultant Gort, and set off for Black Horse Island by boat. Black Horse Island could be announced to the public, but first, it was necessary to welcome the court messengers and Tulip Castle messengers to measure the area to ensure that it was suitable for the Viscount's fief island. Chapter 4:10. Boneyard, in the afternoon. List walked between the 5 huge dragon bones, constantly using magic eyes to observe the magic feedback of the 5 bones. There was no sign of magic power. The so-called recovery of dragon bones in the smoke mission did not show anything, and the 5 decayed dragon bones were still the same. He dispersed the magic eyes and observed the dragon bones with his naked eyes. Judging from the geography of Black Horse Island, the boneyard is located between the Ice Grass Hill and the Needle Grass Hill, roughly due east of the island. If the first keel next to me is the starting point of the coordinate system, 0, 0, the east is the x-axis, the north is the y-axis, and 20 meters is a scale. Then, the second keel is located at, -2, 3, the third keel is located at 4, 5, the fourth keel is located at 8, 3, the fifth keel is located at 11, 4, and the first and second are the closest, reaching 72 meters. List described the coordinate system on the thick bast paper while inspecting. The 5 keel bones located in the coordinate system can roughly be connected into a pentagon in the shape of a sword blade. Is there any special reason for this shape, or this bone division? Or is it because the volcano erupted randomly and the bones were randomly scattered to these 5 points? It seemed that it was just a random scattering, there was no special reason. He put away the thick bast paper and climbed to the top of the first keel. The fracture had been weathered into a flat horizontal surface. Originally there was soil and weeds on it, but now the weeds have been cleaned up, revealing the fine lines of the keel itself. According to the general bones, the bones are hollow, but the dragon bones are not hollow. In other words, the bone marrow inside its bones has been filled with something. List squatted on the cross-section and observed carefully. He could see a dividing line between the bone and the bone marrow. Like the rings of a book. The dragon bones have not fossilized, they are still bones, including a large number of broken bones that were previously transported to Flower Town. They are real bones. Those bone fragments, there is no substance evolved from the bone marrow. What has the bone marrow of these 5 dragon bones become? He wanted to chisel a little bit to study. But the keel was so strong that he could not chisel a hole at all, and what was even more strange was that the echo seemed a little too loud. He stopped, and the echo disappeared instantly. He chiseled the bone hard, and the echo surged. Something's wrong. He immediately cast magic eyes and looked around, but there was no sign of magic. He then chiseled on the bone again. This time, along with the surging echo, the dragon bone under his feet flashed with magical patterns like lightning, fiery red magical power, like veins densely covering the inside of the dragon bone, flashed. There's a situation. He used chisel again to get a clearer look. The fiery red magic power inside the dragon bone flashed. Some were thick, some were thin, and others were intertwined. He turned his head and looked at dragon bone number 2 not far away. When he chiseled it again, a large number of fiery red threads flashed across the surface of the dragon bone as well. He then looked at the 3, 4, and 5 dragon bones in the distance. Every time he chiseled the first dragon bone, the red magic threads would also flash. The echo was amplified. Moreover, as Liszt continued to chisel, these fiery red threads flickered brighter and brighter, as if they would ignite at any time. For some reason, he recalled the feeling of shaking the handle of a tractor when he was young. As the speed of the handle rotation increased, the degree of ignition of the cylinder would be greater, and eventually, accompanied by a burst of black smoke, the tractor would ignite successfully. So, the chisel in his hand was like a needle on a sewing machine, constantly chiseling on the dragon bone. In the vision of magic eyes, the fiery red magic threads were getting brighter and brighter, and in the end, they almost ignited. The temperature of the surrounding air was also getting higher. Just a little more effort, and I can ignite these 5 dragon bones. His heart was full of excitement, and his hands sped up. However, just as the flame was about to ignite, the chisel made of fine steel snapped. The fiery red threads on the dragon bone were instantly extinguished. All his efforts were in vain. Restraining his depressed mood, Liszt took out a bone hammer made of broken dragon bones from the gem space and continued to hammer the bones. However, when he broke the bone hammer, the dragon bone still could not be ignited. There must be something missing. Is it the lack of fire dragon magic? He stopped hammering and sat on the dragon bone to think. His wrists were sore and numb, and he had to rest. After resting, he took out the fire dragon canister. In addition to supplying the fire dragon brick factory, there was still a lot of fire dragon magic that had not been put to use. He released a little fire dragon magic on the dragon bone. Soon, when the fire dragon magic touched the dragon bone, it instantly turned into countless fiery red magic threads, which were swallowed by the dragon bone. When the fiery red threads disappeared, there was no more magic flying out of the small fire dragon. After looking at it for a long time, List was sure of one thing: my precious fire dragon magic, just like that, lost? Unwilling, he took out another bone knife and continued to knock on the dragon bone. However, it was the same result as before. The fiery red threads became brighter and brighter until the bone knife broke, and still did not ignite the fire dragon magic. Is this for me to continue to pour fire dragon magic into it? Obviously, the fire dragon bone lacked a kind of fuel, just like a tractor lacking oil. No matter how hard you try to shake a tractor without oil, it is impossible to ignite successfully. But List was a little reluctant to let the fire dragon magic be used as fuel for these 5 unknown fire dragon bones. After all, the use of fire dragon magic is too great. At present, the fire dragon brick factory relies entirely on the fire dragon magic to work, and the raw material ratio of slates, culverts, and pottery has been figured out. Finished products can be fired. The culverts and slates of the fire dragon brick factory have directly increased the construction speed of Black Horse Island by a large margin. At present, the streets of the port town have been paved with a layer of slate, and the sewer has been buried with culverts. It is clean and unobstructed, and there is no trace of the backwardness and primitive that an ordinary town should have. Once he leaves the fire dragon brick factory, the smell of backwardness will hit him. The fire dragon brick factory is a rare industrial light in my territory. In any case, I must ensure its good operation. The fire dragon magic in stock can barely be used to add fuel. In addition, we can continue to mine underground volcanic glass to extract new fire dragon magic. At this moment, he made a decision to clean up the land and mine all the volcanic glass and fire dragon magic before Black Horse Island has been developed. The entire underground of the island is filled with basalt pillars, and there is a lot of volcanic glass in the cracks, which should be able to mine a lot of fire dragon magic. Is it enough to ignite 5 dragon bones? He looked at the dragon bones in front of him and directly released all the remaining fire dragon magic. When the magic was quickly absorbed by the fire dragon bone, he knocked it for the last time. Unfortunately, the result was still a failure, and the magic could not be ignited. Anyway, the 5 fire dragon bones have obviously recovered. The next step is to continuously mine the fire dragon magic and add fuel to them. When it is really ignited, what will it give birth to? Will it really be a fire dragon cub? List swallowed and felt his heart beat faster. Chapter 4:11. Igniting the fire dragon bone seemed to be a huge project. List even wondered if all the fire dragon magic on Black Horse Island could be collected to complete the ignition. I hope that with the help of the smoke mission, it will be possible to ignite it. But the mining of the fire dragon magic has to be postponed. At this stage, he does not have enough serfs to arrange production. When the construction of Black Horse Island begins, there will definitely be a huge labor shortage. After taking one last look at the fire dragon bone, List returned to Port Town. Because he needed to attend the ceremony the day after tomorrow, he did not have time to stay on Black Horse Island. He had to return to Flower Town tomorrow. At night in Port Town, a brief meeting was held. Measuring the island is just measuring the periphery of the island, but the court messengers and the Tulip Castle messengers will definitely land on Black Horse Island and stay in Port Town for a few days. So confidentiality must be done well. Advisor Gort, how did you arrange it? List asked. My lord, there are 4 places worth paying attention to on Black Horse Island. One is the black blood horses on the grassland, which must be strictly guarded to prevent being discovered. Gort reported. The second is the bones of the boneyard. No matter what kind of creature it is, it will eventually attract attention if it is discovered. The third is the fire dragon brick factory. The slates, culverts, and pottery formulas must be strictly guarded. The last is the rubber garden. Rubber is too important. List looked at Karl Hammerstein. Karl immediately stood up and reported, "At present, the patrols have completed their training and completed the patrol layout of Port Town and Black Horse Harbor. When the messengers are stationed on Black Horse Island, I will send patrols to monitor them all day to prevent them from leaving Port Town and Black Horse Harbor." "Very well, that's what we need to do. Black Horse Island is my territory. They can measure the area, but they can't step an inch inside." Gort asked, "My lord, what if they want to hunt here or see the scenery?" "Tell them that if they want to hunt, go to Coral Island. There is no prey and no scenery on Black Horse Island." List thought for a moment and said, "You can give some gold coins to the court messengers in private and ask them to calculate the area of Black Horse Island as small as possible when they measure the island." On paper, the size of the island was linked to the number of battle merits. The size of the island naturally meant that more battle merits were needed, while a smaller island would have fewer battle merits. In fact, it doesn't matter whether Black Horse Island is big or small, it is List's fief. Therefore, he hoped that the calculation could be smaller. For example, a 1 million yuan house could be reduced to 800,000 yuan with the size contract. The house would still be the same, and the owner would still be paid the same amount of money. However, the taxes would be much lower. After the issue of confidentiality was settled, List asked again, "Apart from the wheat sprite worm that I just contracted, are there no other sprite worms?" After he returned to the flower town, he immediately contracted the plump wheat sprite worm and then placed the barley sprite worm in the barley settlement. The 19 sprite worms had settled down comfortably. According to the frequency of sprite worms rewarded before the smoke mission, at least 1 or 2 sprite worms could have been bred during this month of expedition. Gort spread his hands. "Sir, the glory of the night has infinitely favored Flower Town and Black Horse Island. We found that the number of sprite worms far exceeds that of any place on Coral Island. In more than a month, there have been no signs of new sprite worms being bred." The next morning, the east was just beginning to turn white. List took the rubber worm triplets to the rubber garden to release the power of the 3 phases to restore the rubber trees that had a lot of rubber cut off. After releasing the power of the 3 phases several times, the rubber worms did not show any obvious growth weakness. On the contrary, every time they recovered from fatigue, they seemed more energetic. This seemed to prove that the release of the unique magic of the sprites would not affect their growth and evolution. Later, before the sun rose, aboard the flower, he set off for Mangrove Island. He was going to the mangrove forest to investigate the caterpillars and mallards. The ship quickly sailed to the edge of Mangrove Island. The summer heat was the peak season for plants, and the mangrove forest was denser than before. Many seabirds could be seen flying around Mangrove Island or nesting in the canopy of the mangrove forest. "Put down the boat," Captain Costo shouted. The sailors immediately put down the sampans and hung down the ropes so that they could slide along the ropes to the sampans. These sampans were small wooden boats made of rubber bonded with thorny ironwood. They were very strong and could be used for fishing offshore. It was a product that List was going to promote. The first step to facing the sea was to conquer the coastal waters and develop the fishery. Combined with keel-fixing technology and the unborn schooner technology, sooner or later he would build an ocean-going fishery fleet that could catch whales and even sea monsters. At this time, he slid along the rope to the sampans and quickly rode to the mangrove forest, alarming a large group of seabirds. List was always paying attention to the depths of the mangrove forest, and soon he saw the caterpillar rewarded by the smoke mission. It was a fat, cyan worm the length of a finger and covered with curly hair. At a glance, he could see that the cyan hair was a bit similar to animal fur. "Put on gloves, catch this caterpillar, and feel its hair," List ordered the sailor who was rowing the boat. The sailor immediately stretched out his arm and caught the caterpillar on a mangrove branch. "Sir Lord, it feels very soft, green hair. It feels very comfortable." He simply took off his gloves and touched it with his skin. After touching it, he said that it was comfortable. It was soft like the fur of a kitten or puppy. List nodded and then ordered, "Collect a batch of caterpillars and go back to study their nutritional value and the value of the green hair." Then he continued to row into the depths of the mangrove forest. The mangrove forest had a well-developed root system with intertwined roots. Fortunately, there were still some waterways left. Leaning down on the sampans, they could barely pass through. After several twists and turns, when the sun rose in the east, List finally set foot on the ground of Mangrove Island. The ground was soft silt, obviously often washed by the waves. Many newly grown mangrove seedlings could be seen, not only mangroves, but also many other species. Although they belonged to different families, they all grew together in similar conditions, forming this mangrove forest. These trees are really strange. Not only are their roots strange, but their flowers are even stranger. Marcus broke off a branch and handed it to List. "Sir, please look. Its flowers look like this, like a stick." List took the branch and quickly remembered some knowledge about mangroves. "This is not its flower, but its seedling. The seed has grown into a seedling. Once it falls, it will immediately grow into a new mangrove." "Seedling? A seedling growing on a tree?" Marcus was a little incredulous. "Mangroves live by the sea. If the seed does not germinate on the tree, it will soon be washed away by the waves. However, after it grows on the tree, as long as it touches the mud, it will quickly take root and prevent it from being washed away by the waves. This may be the reason why the mangrove forest can continue to reproduce." A brief explanation. List threw away the branch. He mainly came to pick up duck eggs and see the mallard ducks. He also wanted to find the mangrove sprite's worm stalk. Maybe he could see Nami. Now that he was confirmed as the Viscount of Black Horse Island, if he announced the appearance of a sprite, there would be another wave of flattery like "Knight's Glory," although Nami felt useless now. Just then. Chapter 4:12. It was a mallard. It was a very fat mallard. Its gray body was about the size of a wolf dog, and its head was covered with shiny green hair. It did not fly, but wobbled on the mud and walked towards the shore from the island. "My lord, it is a very fat wild duck." Marcus quietly took his bow and arrows and prepared to hunt. "Take it to the ship, grease it, and roast it. It can change the taste." After unknowingly being influenced by the castle, he also became one of those who loved food. List reached out to stop Marcus. "This is not a wild duck, it is a low-level World of Warcraft mallard that can release water arrows. Observe for a while and see how many mallards there are on the island." "Low-level World of Warcraft?" Marcus raised his eyebrows and became more cautious. Perhaps low-level World of Warcraft was nothing to a well-equipped elite Earth Knight like List, but it was still a threat to a heroic Earth Knight like him. This mallard lived leisurely on Mangrove Island for more than a month without encountering any danger. Its vigilance was greatly reduced, and it leisurely looked for food. It seemed to see a green caterpillar on a branch of a mangrove tree. It opened its mouth and spat out a water arrow, accurately shooting the green caterpillar. The green caterpillar was shot down by the water arrow. It slowly walked over and opened its mouth to bite the green caterpillar. The flat mouth quickly trembled a few times and spat out the green caterpillar. To be precise, it spat out the green hair of the green caterpillar. It only ate the meat of the green caterpillar. After eating one, it wandered into the distance to look for new green caterpillars. List walked out from behind the hidden mangrove tree. It's a good thing that a mallard duck has come to Mangrove Island. Let's look for the duck eggs laid by the mallard duck. This World of Warcraft doesn't like to make nests, so duck eggs are thrown everywhere. Before he finished speaking, Marcus shouted, "My lord! There is an egg here." The light green egg was estimated to be 3 times the size of an ordinary duck egg. List cast magic eyes and could see the light blue magic power flowing inside. There was no doubt that this was a fresh green duck egg. It took an hour. The group of people roughly searched Mangrove Island. Not only did they find 20 green-feathered duck eggs, but they also found several fat green-feathered ducks. However, Liz did not know where the 40 or so ducklings that had hatched were. They were probably hidden by the mangrove elf, Nami. When List found the mangrove worm grass, he saw Nami. Nami hid in the mangrove and did not greet List. She was probably a little afraid of List's Squire Knight. Therefore, List did not force it to show itself. Elves were family heirlooms, so there was no need to tell others about them. Hold the green duck egg carefully. Let's go back. List takes a special look at Nami's mangrove worm grass. He feels that it is just an ordinary mangrove, useless. So he did not care too much and returned directly to the flowers. Enough samples have been collected to try to raise green caterpillars and mallard ducks in Flower Town. When the technology is fully mastered, the scale of breeding on Black Horse Island can be expanded. The mallard duck will definitely become a highly valuable magical beast industry in List's hands. On the ship, List ordered the Squire Knight to pad the duck eggs with cloth and lay them flat on the deck so that the sun can constantly shine on them, so as not to delay their hatching. Consultant Gort, the green caterpillar and mallard breeding techniques should be figured out as soon as possible. As you wish. I brought back 7 craftsmen, you should also arrange for them as soon as possible. List remembered that he had asked Marcus to go to Main City to search for craftsmen, then send them directly to the seaside and sneak into the fleet. There were a total of 7 craftsmen and their families. Originally, he planned to continue to search for craftsmen, but unfortunately, he was stopped by the Count. He did not want to lose sight of the bigger picture, so he could only bring back these 7 craftsmen. Fred Welbore's work is easy to arrange. I will configure a special drilling team for him. Gort said with some excitement, his arrival is very important to Black Horse Island. It is difficult to get water from the port town. The water in the nearby river is too small, so we must drill to get water. Fred Welbore was the only craftsman among the 7 craftsmen who had reached the master level. He was also an indispensable drill master in the territory, not an oil drill master, but a water well drill master. His surname also originated from drilling. Wellbore is a wooden tool used to fix the wall of a well. It can be said that Fred's move to Black Horse Island solved the water problem of Black Horse Island. Gort continued, the papersmith, Ravanya, can build a thick bast paper workshop for him so that we can produce our own thick bast paper. The shoemaker, Flatten, can prepare a shoe shop in Flower Town. I believe that business should be able to get by. The 2 sculptors can be arranged to go to the carpentry workshop to carve furniture with the carpenters. The umbrella craftsman, Gomez, can also prepare an umbrella shop. I remember there is also a carpenter. List asked. Yes, the carpenter Dwight. I asked him yesterday. He can castrate cows and horses. He once castrated the horses for the nobles of Main City. Those horses originated from his castration. Gord is now more and more accustomed to his identity and works diligently. The batch of mixed horses in the stables is about to be born. In the future, when they grow up, the work of castrating the horses can be handed over to Dwight. Counting. Fiery Dragon and other Mares have been pregnant for 11 months, and it is time to give birth. This is the first batch of horses mixed with the black blood horse bloodline. He does not know the quality, but List has high hopes for them. The purebred black blood horse herd cannot be developed without decades of breeding. It is difficult to arm orders of chivalry. But they can continue to breed and give birth to hybrids. As long as the Mares can keep up, these hybrids can expand in a short time. Arming orders of chivalry is easy. He is already a Viscount of Black Horse Island and can support an Earth Knight regiment of more than 100 people to fight for him. Drillers. Papersmith, shoemaker, umbrella craftsman, carver, and carpenter. These 7 selected craftsmen barely make up for some of the industries that Flower Town does not have. However, to build Black Horse Island, more craftsmen are needed: tinkers, vinegar makers, butchers, scales, salt workers, sharpeners, pen makers, bamboo makers, molders, wax workers, ink workers, and so on. There are even burlesque actors and so on. This belongs to the construction of spiritual civilization. After returning to Flower Town, the green-feathered duck egg continued to bask in the sun. List went to the magic workshop and asked Chris about the progress of the answers to the magic notes. He did not expect that in just one day, she had solved all the answers. "My lord, the magician who asked the question is very intelligent, but his experience is too young. It is like he is fumbling on his own, and many of his common sense understandings are wrong. I have solved the questions in this magic notes for the time being. If you need it, I can write another detailed basic teaching of magic and give it to you." Chris is very dedicated to List as a savior or a sponsor of magic research. Of course, List will not refuse. "Then I will have to trouble you. She is a distant sister of mine. She does not like to practice qi, but is interested in magic." Chapter 413. The magic notes that Crazy had answered were given to a qi, who was studying seriously. The smoke mission was completed. Mission completed. Reward: water great magician a qi eloids. Truth. Sure enough, a qi is about to break through and become a great magician. But then again, what is the distinction between a great magician and a magician? List was very puzzled about this. Magic is not like Do Qi, which is divided into low-level, mid-level, high-level and Dragon Do Qi. So, between a great magician and a magician, in addition to the different types of magic, he was not clear about the other differences. No one could answer his questions. So far, the only great magician he had seen was the court great magician who set off fireworks for Marquis Merlin on Red Crab Island, Grimand in truth. They drank together at the banquet, but they did not chat more than a few words. Crazy had obviously been in contact with a great magician. Her teacher was a great magician, but her teacher did not tell her the meaning of a great magician early on, probably treating her as a cannon fodder for the goat gathering and did not want to teach her further magic knowledge. When a qi breaks through and becomes a great magician, I will study it again. Maybe I can summarize some information that can be used to help Crazy and help her break through and become a great magician. In this way, I have 2 great magicians. Magicians are indeed evil, but they should not harm me. List's impression of the magician was not very good. Of course, the knight's practice was inseparable from the magician's supply of potions and making magic equipment. But the magician's paranoia to the truth made them fearless and they would always do some terrible things. They often made some explosions, but they even had ideas about dragons. The great magician of the Grand Duchy of Maple Leaf used the light dragon to transform the white dragon. The great magician of the goat gathering even used the sapphire dragon to transform the lich. As a noble knight and a member of the ruling class, List naturally wanted to belittle the magician. Lawless. And he decided in his heart that if the magician could not be firmly controlled by himself, he would not let them live in his territory. In the Sea View Villa, a qi was reading the book seriously. Her face was sometimes confused and sometimes surprised, completely immersed in the answers of the magic notes. List sat on the side, thinking about the new smoke mission. There aren't many glorious moments in a person's life that are worth remembering. For a knight, being promoted to a noble is definitely a moment that is worth remembering. Please treat this noble conferring ceremony with the best of your abilities and raise your prestige as a noble. Reward: burst Sprite Worm. Sprite Worm outbreak, what does that mean? He pondered inwardly, could it be that another Sprite Worm is going to evolve? Or is the territory going to breed a new batch of Sprite Worms? No matter which one it was a reward that made him excited. At present, he had 2 lesser sprites and 19 Sprite Worms. For the Baron, this was a crazy amount of wealth. Even for a Viscount, it was a very generous amount. However, Liszt was still not satisfied. His goal in life was not to become a small Viscount, so the elves had to keep hoarding. Completing the noble conferment ceremony with a full face and increasing my prestige as a noble. I originally intended to keep a low profile, but now it seems that I need to keep a high profile. His high-profile action was to lead a luxurious team when he set off for Tulip Castle the next day. The Chocobo Loki was his mount, wearing a mithril armor, a sky-splitting sword, a swift shadow bow, and a bright red cloak embroidered with a black tulip. Dosen, the blizzard beast, led the 8 little ones, who had been taught a lesson and returned to their shivering days, following closely behind. On the back of Black Dragon was his personal guard, the Black Dragon Gang Paris. Behind them were the 10 Earth Knights of Flower Town, a group of retainer knights, and officials waiting to witness his conferring ceremony. It could be said that all the followers were brought out, only Ella and Nami were not put on his shoulders, and 19 servants were chosen to hold sprite worms. Such a flashy appearance, galloping all the way to Tulip Castle, attracted countless gazes. Specifically passing through Coral City, it attracted countless citizens to flock to the streets and discuss, "This is Sir Count's most outstanding son, the new Sir Viscount. World of Warcraft, so many World of Warcraft." Just now, the World of Warcraft dog looked at me and I was so scared that I almost peed in my crotch. What a terrifying look. The one riding on the big bird is Sir Viscount, his noble temperament is as awe-inspiring as Sir Count's. The Tulip family's bloodline is too noble, and the glory is always continuous. Liszt did not hear the envy and admiration of the civilians. He whistled away from Coral City and rushed to Tulip Castle. Under the escort of the Night Guard, he went directly to the castle gate. The nobles who came to participate in the conferring ceremony came out of Tulip Castle to welcome the arrival of Liszt. "Viscount Liszt, congratulations, tonight will be your one-man show." Trick Wildgrass stepped forward and said. "The glory belongs to all the knight who are conferred the title tonight." Liszt responded with a smile. In addition to him, there were several other Lord Knights who were conferred the title tonight. They were all veteran Earth Knights who had accumulated several military exploits and were granted the title of nobility. For these commoner-born Earth Knights, this was a day of qualitative change, a moment of glory that they dreamed of. The 10 Earth Knights of Flower Town were not conferred the title because they had not accumulated enough military exploits and did not have the ability and background of Liszt. "Sir Viscount, Aubrey says hello to you." The fat man, who once put his arm around Liszt's shoulder, dared not talk to Liszt on an equal footing at the moment. He stood beside his father and bowed respectfully. Liszt's heart was filled with emotion, but he was even more proud. However, his face was still as warm as a spring breeze, with a standard aristocratic smile. "Aubrey, you have gained a lot of weight. Come to Flower Town or Black Horse Island when you have time. As long as you are not busy, I look forward to visiting Black Horse Island at any time." Jonas Gravel and his son also came to say hello, but they were not very warm. In the Battle of Iron Hoof Island, Jonas's losses and gains were not balanced, and he was depressed. Just after the greetings, Levis appeared again, hugged Liszt, and said loudly, "Liszt, welcome the real owner of Tulip Castle tonight." This sentence was mostly polite, but it did mean that he was truly proud of Levis. After the polite greetings, he quickly changed the subject. "Liszt, are these your blizzard beasts?" "Yes, they have grown up. I will take this opportunity to take them out for a walk and prepare for training them on the battlefield in the future." Liszt snapped his fingers, and Dosen immediately led the 8 little ones around him. "I am going to form a blizzard beast siege squad. I regret it." Levis said in an envious and complaining tone, "I really should have snatched a few blizzard beasts." Dosen's performance on the battlefield was too eye-catching. "By the way, has the female flying dust dog continued to get pregnant? You can't forget that you promised me half of the next baby of the flying dust dog." "I said I would give you a few, but I didn't say half. Of course, as long as they can continue to reproduce, I am willing to share them with the family, but it is a pity that the female flying dust dog is not pregnant. List expressed his regret. It was a real pity. Chapter 4:14. I pledge my life to serve, sir. The Tulip Hall, where the conferring ceremony had already begun, echoed with excited, uplifted, and trembling roars. 5 Earth Knights, who had accumulated enough military merits, held the medal symbolizing the title of Lord Knight. Hot tears overflowed from the corners of their eyes. The efforts of several generations had finally been realized in their generation. They were filled with glory and incomparable pride. Back in the day, the ancestors of the Tulip family were also commoners. Even earlier than that, their ancestors were serfs of an unknown country. Their great-great-grandfather, who was born with divine strength, came back alive from the battlefield and was conferred the title of Lord Knight, a hereditary title. Since then, the family grew stronger step by step and became the present Count family. The Lord Knight was a new starting point for the evolution of the aristocracy. Although the road ahead was not smooth and they could die on the battlefield at any time, there was already a clear path. The son would inherit his father's career and forge ahead. The 5 new Lord Knights solemnly performed the standard knight's loyalty ceremony to the Count sitting in the main seat. The Count calmly accepted it. Soon, the conferring ceremony quickly entered the real climax. The Count's retainer knight, holding the metal stick symbolizing power and the Viscount medal symbolizing glory, walked into the hall and stood aside. There was also a retainer knight, holding Lee William's sword. The Count stood up from his seat. He took 2 steps and said in a deep voice, "My son and my follower, List Tulip. I will repay courage with glory, loyalty with love, and betrayal with revenge. Witness the glory of the knight." List took a step forward and, in accordance with the established procedure, knelt on the ground, straightened his body, and calmly gazed at the Count, neither happy nor sad. The retainer knight handed over the sword, and the Count picked it up. Placing the blade of the long sword on List's left shoulder, he solemnly said, "In view of your performance on the battlefield, your courageous charge, your fearlessness of life and death, your glorious glory, bringing Coral Island a lot of military merits," the blade was raised and moved to his right shoulder. "Now, as the Earl of Coral Island, I grant you the title of Viscount, Lord of Black Horse Island, in charge of all the power of Black Horse Island, and to provide for a knight to drive. For me." He handed the sword to the retainer knight, picked up the metal stick that symbolized power, and solemnly handed it over to List. List took the cane with both hands and slammed it on the ground. Clang! When the metal came into contact with the floor, it made a dull sound. Using the stick to support his body to stand up, he bowed and performed the knight's loyalty ceremony. "I will take charge of Black Horse Island, provide for the knight, and drive for my lord." William Lee nodded and picked up another medallion in the shape of a shield. About the size of a baby's palm, it was a bronze medallion with a light brass color. The front was engraved with patterns that symbolized a viscount. Upon closer inspection, it looked like a tulip. The back was engraved with the words, "Black Horse Island," in serpentines. The workmanship was not exquisite and looked very rough. But this was a noble proof of aristocratic status. "From now on, you will walk on the ground as a viscount. Civilians will kneel when they see you, and colleagues will call you by your title. And I, your Lord Lee William Tulip, will call your name. List Tulip." The Earl hung the Viscount medal on his chest. Immediately, the nobles around the hall shouted in unison, "Viscount List." Then the knight without a title, bowed and shouted, "Sir Viscount." List turned around with a Viscount medal hanging on his neck and a metal cane. Looking around, he was in high spirits and determined that he had become the 4th Viscount on Coral Island and the 3rd Viscount of a fief. At this point, the short but exciting process of the conferring ceremony was over, and the glory had been obtained. Next was the celebration banquet. List, I am proud of you. The Earl walked in front of him and raised his glass. I hope that in the future, you will manage Black Horse Island well, gain more glory, and make the Tulip family famous because of your name. Father, I will always urge myself, work tirelessly, and continue to win glory. Levis also came with a glass of wine. I hope that we brothers will continue to fight side by side and fight for the glory of the Tulip family. Of course. Then his advisor, Gort, came happily and raised his glass. To my lord, the glory of the Tulip family, and the ruler of Black Horse Island, List, I offer my most loyal tribute. Marcus and others came and toasted List. Drinking the flower wine, List decided to open his arms and refuse no one tonight. I am with you. I am proud of you, my young man. Madame Penelope hugged List and sent her grandmother's blessing early in the morning as he prepared to leave. Thank you, grandmother. Ulvera also gave him a hug. Well done, my dear brother, you always surprise us. Madame Marie and Lytton also came to say goodbye, at least on the surface, and he responded with a warm smile. Then he listened to the Earl's gratified smile. When the palace's envoys arrive, I will have advisor Jacob accompany the envoys to measure Black Horse Island. This is your territory. In the future, run it properly. If there are difficulties, ask the family for help. I know, father. Build Black Horse Island as soon as possible, and your castle, I hope to have a room in it. Grandmother, you, Madame Marie, Levis, Ulvera, and Lytton will all have a room in my castle. You are welcome to come to Black Horse Island at any time. The Earl patted List on the shoulder and looked at his son, who was much taller than himself, with an obvious smile. Go, I know you are thinking about Black Horse Island. List nodded, turned over on the chocobo Loki, and was ready to set off. At this time, Madame Penelope suddenly shouted, "Oh, young man, wait a minute, I have another potted plant for you. Young knight, blessed by the glory of the night, it may bring you good luck." Saying that, her maid struggled to hold a potted tree half the height of a person. There were also a few purple-red oval fruits hanging on the tree. List felt helpless about his grandmother's habit of gifting him potted plants. After all, not every potted plant could breed a sprite worm. But he still smiled and asked the retainer knight to carry the potted plants to the carriage. Then the team set off, walking on the ground of Coral Island as the Viscount of Black Horse Island. Now, throughout Coral City, everyone knows that the new Viscount has been named. The name list is no longer passed down by word of mouth as the second son of the Tulip family, but the Viscount of Black Horse Island. The chocobo was very stable on his back, and he could summon smoke missions at will. The smoke rose and formed a large section of serpentines. At first glance, it seemed that the mission was not yet completed, but List looked closely and found that the mission was completed. It was just that the reward was somewhat jaw-dropping. Chapter 4:15. 5 Sprite Worms? List almost exclaimed. He was already surprised enough when he was rewarded with 3 rubber worms and 4 snake blood fruit sprite worms. However, he was unexpectedly rewarded with 5 sprite worms at once, and the point was that these 5 sprite worms were different. The day before yesterday, I was complaining that I hadn't harvested a sprite worm for more than a month, and now I have received such a concentrated surprise. The smoke grass sprite worm must be in the smoke grass field, it is easy to find. The green tea tree sprite must be one of the 3 green tea trees, the fig sprite worm. Flower Town and Black Horse Island don't seem to have figs. By the way, grandmother just gave me a potted plant, does it look like a fig? He quickly went around to the carriage and told the retainer knight, "Open the carriage door and let me see the potted plant." After the carriage door opened, in the vision of the magic eye, the potted plant had a magic reaction. On one of the purple-red fruits, there were obvious signs of red magic convergence. "Take care of this potted plant, don't break a leaf." "Yes, sir." Looking away from the fig potted plant, List suddenly didn't know how to describe it. He just complained that his grandmother always liked to give potted plants to people. It didn't make sense at all. He didn't expect this to be the second potted plant with sprite worms that she gave away. It seems that I have to go to grandmother's balcony often to see if there will be a third sprite worm. He was in a good mood. He had just been conferred the title of nobility, and here came 5 sprite worms to celebrate. In this way, the whereabouts of the fig worm, the smoke grass worm, and the green tea worm have been determined. Only the blackberry worm and the pea worm are left. Blackberries are very common wild shrubs on Coral Island, and they are also wild fruits that civilians can often eat, like raspberries and mulberries, with a sour and sweet taste. He didn't know if it was because there were too many wild blackberries, but no civilians chose to grow blackberries. Mrs. Abby, on the other hand, made a pie called blackberry pancake, which is a pancake sprinkled with blackberries. The taste is just passable. There are a lot of wild blackberries in Flower Town and Black Horse Island. If no one provides clues, it will be difficult to find the blackberry worm. List frowned, and then thought about the other pea worm. Peas were a common food for civilians. Every commoner would plant peas in their yard. The ripe peas could be ground into flour and mixed with wheat flour to make grain black bread, which was the staple food of the commoners. Tender peas could be used as a vegetable to accompany bread. List liked eating peas. Especially the fried green peas. It was like the American peas he used to eat before he crossed over. It tasted great. Almost every commoner's family grows peas, but there are no large-scale pea fields. I wonder whose family this pea worm will be born in. I hope this family is smart enough to discover the abnormality of the pea worm stock and report it to the administrative office. Don't damage my pea worm stock. The fief's policy was that there would be high rewards for the discovery of potions, sprite worms, research of new technologies and so on. Encourage the townsfolk to explore the new world. However, there weren't many who could actually receive this reward. Still, this reward was enthusiastically supported by the town's residents. Everyone hoped that they could be the lucky one. Therefore, List was not worried about his sprite worm. After all, what was to come would come. He enjoyed the scenery along the way, feeling that today's scenery was exceptionally beautiful. Perhaps only Meng Jiao's poem could describe his current mood, flushed with success, seeing all the flowers of Chang'an in a day. He couldn't help but reach out to touch the Viscount medal hanging on his chest, and then took it off. The moment of high profile had already passed. Next, it should be more stable. There was no need to continue wearing the Viscount medal, a superfluous ornament. Made of brass, I wonder how many copper coins can be forged from it. List thought. The medals of different titles were made of different materials. When the king conferred the title of duke, it was said that the medal was made of the magic metal fine gold. The medal of marquis was made of gold, the medal of count was made of silver, the medal of viscount was made of brass, and the medal of baron was made of steel. As for the medal of chevalier knight, it was made of wrought iron. This medal was only used once during the conferring ceremony, or when participating in high-class banquets. It was rarely taken out, nor was it used as a token to prove one's identity. In List's castle, there was also a medal of the Flower Town's baron, made of steel, which he had never worn. He handed the medal to the retainer knight for safekeeping. List continued to look at the smoke mission. A new mission had been issued. Mission: as the new Viscount Lord, with an independent island as a fief, the next step is naturally to build a castle worthy of your identity. Please choose a suitable location to build the castle. Reward: high-grade Qi secret manual. At first, when he saw the mission reward, his eyes suddenly blazed, feeling that he had been shrouded in the glory of a knight. But after calming down and thinking about it, he couldn't help but laugh. He understood where the mission reward came from. During the Battle of Iron Hoof Island, when plundering the spoils of war, he had found the high-grade Qi secret manual, 15 kg Thunder Sky Shock Flash. in fragrant celery castle. Therefore, he asked the Count to use this secret manual to trade for a high-grade qi secret manual suitable for fire-attributed qi. The Count naturally would not refuse his son's request. Moreover, the family did not have a thunder-attributed knight. Although I know that the reward for the smoke mission will not be fabricated out of thin air, but, this kind of reward, which clearly can be achieved without the smoke mission, is really a bit embarrassing. Like the birth of a sprite worm, he really needed the smoke mission's hint and the thread of fate. Under the current circumstances, there was no need for the smoke mission to interfere. However, the smoke mission had already interfered, leaving List quite helpless. He now had two choices. One was to wait for the high-grade qi secret manual to arrive, then he could change the mission and issue a new one. The other was to complete the mission. It just wants me to choose a suitable location to build the castle, not to build the castle now. Therefore, the mission is not difficult. Since it was not difficult, he would naturally choose to complete it as a double insurance, ensuring that he had a high-grade qi secret manual suitable for his use. Because he had gradually felt that his potions were progressing smoothly and his strength was improving rapidly, far surpassing that of his elder brother, Levis. He compared the total amount of qi between him and Levis and found that the qi within his body had clearly surpassed that of Levis. Levis had been using potions for a few years, while List had been using potions for less than a year. After 1 year, I have already surpassed Levis. Perhaps in another year or two, I will really be able to promote to a Sky Knight before the age of 20. Scientific potions are really effective. Moreover, I have dragon milk to increase nutrition, green tea to digest food, World of Warcraft meat every day, and I still haven't finished eating the six-headed king sea serpent meat. It could be said that by relying on his own gains, his potion methods were not inferior to those of greater aristocrats. Right, I also have Black Nightshade, a type of supplementary potion. I wonder if it will improve my potions. While thinking. Chapter 4:16. After returning to the flower town, List busied himself. First, he placed the fig worm stalk in the castle's garden and instructed the servants to fertilize and water it. Then, at the luncheon, he summoned all of the town's officials and announced a general survey: check all the crops in the fief. No sprite worms have been bred for more than a month, there may be some that have been overlooked. The general survey was just a cover to conceal his knowledge of the sprite worm's existence in advance. In the afternoon, he joined the general survey and patrolled the flower town. Of course, he was selective in his patrolling. Soon, he patrolled the smoke grass field, released magic eyes, and began to look for the worm stalk. Not long after, he easily saw the worm stalk in a corner of the farmland. To be precise, he also saw the sprite worm. The worm stalk was not very conspicuous, but its branches and leaves were exuberant, with a chubby gray sprite worm crawling on it. It has actually been bred. It seems that it happened during the time I was away. Perhaps the farmland was fertilized too much, greatly increasing the probability of the flower town sprite worm breeding. Normally, a small town could produce a sprite worm in a year, which was already a good harvest. Because of the smoke mission, the flower town greatly increased the survival rate of sprite worms, making them almost impossible to miscarry. As for why a plant could breed a sprite worm, there was not yet enough data to analyze and make a judgment. It might be related to nutrition. However, the most nutritious plants might not necessarily breed sprite worms, while malnourished plants might also breed sprite worms. My 4 snake blood fruit worms were bred from the blood of a snake-type sea monster, which is probably a clue. Unfortunately, I still don't understand what conditions trigger the breeding of sprite worms. Magic power radiation? Nutritional stimulation? Or genetic mutation? A thought flashed by. He had already taken out jade powder and sprinkled it on the leaves of the smokegrass worm stalk, attracting the smokegrass worm. Watching the smokegrass worm energetically lick the jade powder, he stretched out the finger smeared with the jade powder. Then, it was bitten. It was not very painful, nor was it bleeding. The next moment, a telepathic contract was established, and he could already feel the little fellow's vague emotions. It was happy because it ate the jade powder. Pack it up. List picked up the smoke grass worm and gave it to the retainer knight to put in a jade box. Rome, protect this smoke grass worm stock. Yes, sir. Rome responded with a very excited expression. Flower Town is really a place of night glory. Sir is born to be a night glory. List had heard so much about the topic of the night's glory that his ears were going to get calluses. However, he felt every time he listened, he didn't get bored. He contracted the smoke grass worm. The blackberry worm and pea worm could only wait for now. The worm stock's distribution range was too wide, and there was no way to find it. They could only wait patiently for the reports from the civilians. He planned to sail to Black Horse Island tomorrow to complete the smoke mission and contract the green tea bug. He had not left the smoke grass field. Hearing that he had contracted a new sprite worm, Gort quickly rushed over and flattered him. List did not lose himself in the flattery. He still kept a clear head and casually asked, "Consultant Gort, how do you deal with the smoke grass in the town? It's mainly used to be dried and stacked in an open space, then wrapped in wheat straw. It's not very useful normally. Smoke grass was extremely smelly. It might be effective against World of Warcraft and wild beasts. Now that the Flower Town had razed the Thorns Ridge to the ground, let alone World of Warcraft, there were not even a few stray cats to be seen. Therefore, the smoke grass was basically useless. The hay that had been harvested was piled in the clearing and left to rot. But even if the smoke grasses were really useless, List would not cut them down because they were the only good thing that could attract the invisible dragon. Rationally, he concluded that the possibility of the invisible dragon returning to the Flower Town was very small. However, inwardly, he was still looking forward to the day when the invisible dragon would recall the smell of the smoke grass and return. At that time, the smoke grass still has its value. Don't slack off when it comes to planting. Now that we have the smoke grass worm, we'll maintain an area of 100 mu. Also, arrange for people to study the use of the smoke grass. Don't ignore it just because it smells bad. List pondered for a moment and said, "I'll give you an idea." "Sir, please instruct us." "If the smoke grass can smoke away World of Warcraft, then have you ever considered diluting and reducing its smell so that people can't smell it, yet it can drive away mosquitoes?" He thought of a plant on Earth, mugwort. During the Dragon Boat Festival, people would hang mugwort on their doorsteps. Normally, many people would burn mugwort to drive away mosquitoes, or crush it into powder to fill pillows and sachets. The moxa sticks used in acupuncture were also made of mugwort. There was probably no mugwort in this world. Therefore, List wondered whether the smoke grass would have the same effect. You can start your research from this aspect. In short, you have to think about the possibilities of these plants. Gort flattered, "Sir, you always have a genius idea. I will arrange for the serfs to study whether the smoke grass can drive away mosquitoes as soon as possible." When List gave him an idea, List would only think about it. He had no intention of using his brain at all. Without experiencing the baptism of the Industrial Revolution, human thinking would only be limited to the established rules and regulations. List felt very helpless about this. Fiery Dragon was about to give birth. One-Eyed Barton, who already had a lame leg, was very worried. He went to the stable on crutches from his sickbed and personally took charge of Fieriddragon's delivery. List patrolled Flower Town. In the evening, he came to visit his old partner. Fiery Dragon was his birthday gift, his night's dream, and his entanglement of father-son feelings. The transmigrator List also liked this docile filly very much. However, ever since he tamed Black Dragon, Fieriddragon's appearances became less and less, and it gradually became a breeding tool. Stroking its fiery red mane, List couldn't help but whisper, "After you give birth, I will ride you and gallop again." Fiery Dragon seemed to understand his words. It gently rubbed its head against List's arm and made a slight sound, "Humph." List and Fiery Dragon were intimate for a moment. List looked at One-Eyed Barton, who was on crutches. "Barton, how is your leg injury?" "Thank you for your concern, master." Barton's leg is lame, but his body has recovered. "I hope master does not mind. Barton can continue to raise horses and drive for master." "Of course, you can continue to raise horses for me. After a while, I will build a castle on Black Horse Island. At that time, you will have more horses to raise. It may be very hard. I am not afraid of hard work. Please rest assured, master, Barton will definitely keep the castle's horses strong and healthy." One-Eyed Barton said excitedly. To him, being able to work in the castle was the best outcome. Everyone envies the work in the castle. Of course, it would be better if the group of blizzard beasts could stay away. Barton felt a faint pain in his calf when he thought of those crazy big dogs. It was as if a crazy blizzard beast had released a rock spike and pierced it. Take good care of your injuries and leave the hard work to the 5 men who have learned to raise horses. Whether it is for compensation or Barton's talent in raising horses, List will continue to hire One-Eyed Barton. Chapter 4:17. After handing over the production of Fire Dragon to One-Eyed Barton, List returned to the castle. Before eating, he took the time to play the piano again. The impulse of being the king of piano has probably subsided, but he still likes to play the piano. Listening to music purifies the mind. At the dinner party, his followers got drunk to celebrate his success in being knighted on Black Horse Island. "I wish I could be so carefree." List envied these people. They could eat and drink without thinking about the future. He was still a little depressed in his heart because before the start of the dinner, Blair, the financial officer, reported to him, "My lord, you asked for 4,260 gold coins to be raised. With the financial resources of Flower Town and Black Horse Island, the current commercial funds and taxes have all been transferred, and only 1,350 gold coins have been raised. If the remaining gold coins are mortgaged with the future proceeds of Flower Brew, how long will it take to withdraw enough gold coins from Tulip Castle? I have calculated that the current production scale and market sales of Flower Brew are only partially spread on Coral Island and Red Crab Island. Golden Island is still under negotiation. The monthly share is about 600 gold coins. It will take about 6 months to withdraw enough gold coins. Then mortgage it." "But my lord, if the future proceeds of Flower Brew are mortgaged, the construction of the territory for the next 6 months will immediately be in trouble. We do not have enough financial resources to support the construction of Black Horse Island. We can't maintain it only by the proceeds of Flower Soap, Carpentry Workshop, and Black Tulip," Blair said helplessly. Flower Town's foundation was still too thin, and List was bent on rapid development, leading to the collapse of the capital chain. "Don't worry, first mortgage the proceeds of Flower Brew, I will find a way to get the missing gold coins." List comforted him, but his heart was bleeding. He knew that he would have to sell his family property again. So, his followers drank heartily, but he couldn't get involved. He didn't want to get involved, he didn't like drinking. Holding the iced juice and sipping it, his mind was thinking about how to make money. Flower Town is obviously rich in products and a large number of elves are promoting production, but it still can't keep up with my consumption. It's the most profitable potion, but it's only enough for me to take it myself. It's really hard to raise an elite Earth Knight of the potion style. In this world, as long as one had enough to eat and had a decent aptitude, one could basically cultivate to become an Earth Knight. However, not everyone could afford the elite Earth Knight who insisted on taking drugs every day. Black Horse Island has not yet been developed. At present, List's income comes from Flower Town. That is, with the help of the Smoke Mission, coupled with the development of flour wine, flour soap and other products, with the power of a small town, he was able to continue to take pills and cultivate. Gold coins were the biggest obstacle to a knight's progress. Otherwise, we can sell rubber. Black Horse Island hasn't been developed and doesn't need too much rubber. Such a good product, Tulip Castle should need it. It can be sold for a good price. After magic potions and ironwood, the most important agricultural product in the territory was the all-purpose rubber. Of course, the milk of dragon-type cows was also an important product, but it was not suitable for public consumption and was suitable for internal supply. In fact, he could also sell the inventory of mithril, jade, and crystals, but these were consumable resources, easy to sell but difficult to obtain, so he was reluctant to sell them. So it's decided, sell rubber. After the dinner, he went to the Sea View Villa. Achi hardly went swimming these 2 days. She was seriously reading notes and studying magic, almost fascinated by it. This made List feel like he had been left out in the cold. Brother, Achi feels that she will soon be able to understand the key information and break through to become a great magician. She is helping her brother sail. Fortunately, she was just too involved in magic research and did not really neglect List. It's necessary to work hard, but don't stay up too late. More relaxation can make your brain clearer and more efficient than burying yourself in magic books all day. Well, Achi understands. Having said that, her eyes still couldn't leave the magic books. List stopped bothering her and began to tease Nami. The mangrove elf did not feed the ducks on Mangrove Island today, but stayed with Achi in the Sea View Villa. Chirp. Nami sat at the table, holding an apple in her hand. The apple was given to her by List, and she liked apples very much. Nami, do you like mangroves? Chirp, chirp. Nami took another bite of the apple, and then blinked her big eyes at List, not knowing if she understood List's words. According to the living habits of mangroves, I plan to plant mangroves in Flower Town and the seaside of Black Horse Island to create habitats for green caterpillars and mallard ducks. He was talking to Nami, but he was actually thinking about it himself. Green caterpillars cannot be raised in ordinary forests. Mallard ducks may be raised in cages, but if you want to raise them well, you can't do without the green caterpillars. The green caterpillars on Mangrove Island alone certainly cannot support the large-scale breeding of mallard ducks. Chirp. Nami glanced at List and looked down at the big apple she was holding. Then, she reluctantly handed the big apple to List. Chirp. Huh, I don't want to eat it, you eat it. List pushed the apple back and touched the little green leaves and red flowers on Nami's head. The emerald green Nami looked particularly pleasant. Originally, in addition to her beauty, her biggest role was that the mangrove tree could produce a kind of fruit with a light sweet and sour taste. It was not very delicious and he didn't know what it was used for. However, with the establishment of the food chain relationship between green caterpillars and mallard ducks, the use of mangroves began to emerge. Mangroves were inseparable from Nami's mangrove cordyceps, not to mention that Nami could also raise ducklings. After playing for a while, List left the Sea View Villa. Early the next morning, List took the flowers to Black Horse Island. Now the flowers basically traveled between Black Horse Island and Flower Town every day. Captain Costo not only transported cargo but also trained his crew by sailing. When Black Horse Island entered a stage of rapid development, List must form a fleet to serve his territory. Teacher Marcus, Isaiah, what do you think of this land for building a castle? I want to build a waterfront castle, half immersed in the water and the other half standing on the shore. Standing on the rocky shore east of the port town, List asked his followers for their opinions. The castle is closely related to the city. Sir, have you decided to build the port town into a port city? Black Horse Island is too small. A port city is very necessary. The island is suitable for building a port. In addition to the current Black Horse port, there is only one seaport in the northwest. List said, in terms of route and distance, the port town is the most suitable place to build a city. Then I have no problem with the castle being built in its current location, but sir, we may be able to build the castle completely on the shore to avoid being attacked by sea creatures. Chapter 4:18. Liszt intended to build a modern castle. With rubber and ironwood, many plans could be realized. Of course, there was no money to build a castle, so he had to live for a few days without money. However, this did not prevent him from planning the castle's building location, floor area, and high-level requirements. The attached castle was probably the tallest building in a city. The flower town's small nameless castle was only 2 stories high. Generally, nameless castles were 2 or 3 stories high. Most of the castles with names had 4 stories. Many viscounts and earls would build 4-story castles. Outside the 4-story main body, there might be taller steeples used for vigilance and defense. Tulip Castle was a 4-story castle, but it was built according to the mountainside, looking particularly majestic. Greater aristocrats generally chose steep mountainside locations to build their castles, which were easy to defend and difficult to attack. The most magnificent castle Liszt had ever seen was Longtaro Castle. The 5-story castle looked like it was integrated with the mountain range, a miracle built of rock. From now on, this rocky beach will be the location of the castle. To the east and north, the castle's attached buildings will be built one after another. To the south, a stone road will be built to connect the port city. As for the port city, I hope that its scale will be between that of a large city and a small city. Incidentally, Liszt also outlined his idea for the new city. Normally, a lord city would develop spontaneously, slowly accumulating population and slowly expanding in scale. Therefore, the city appeared chaotic and unhygienic, with sewage, feces, and urine flowing everywhere. Liszt did not want his city to become a city of feces and urine. Sewers, toilets, and septic tanks were essential facilities for him to build a new city and a new town. The separation of the commercial district, workshop district, and residential district was also the urban planning that he advocated. Such a city could be called the light of civilization. At night, Liszt summoned the smoke mission. Now that the location of the new castle has been determined, this is the place. The threads of fate were pulled, and the smoke turned into snake-like trajectories, twisting together to form a section of serpentines. Mission completed. Reward: High-level Qi secret manual, Red Sun Rising Fire. The high-level Qi secret manual had arrived and was probably stored in Tulip Castle. He immediately paid attention to the new mission. Mission: the crystal craftsman Brad has lost his job. All the volcanic glass in the town's inventory has been carved into utensils. His crystal workshop is completely idle. As the Lord, you should solve his job problem. Reward: mutated corn grass. Mutated corn grass? The corn grass was currently being cultivated as a pasture. The scale of cultivation was very large, reaching an area of 300 mu. They were often harvested as fodder for the black blood horses and dragon breed cows to provide them with more nutrition. Liszt's heart skipped a beat. The mutated corn grass is developing in the direction of potions? Or should I say, corn? Corn grass is not corn. According to the species classification on Earth, corn was domesticated from wild corn grass by humans 10,000 years ago. It was only until today that it became a cereal corn that produced large cobs. This meant that corn grass and corn cobs were somewhat related. In this magical world, it was not impossible for corn grass to mutate into corn. Compared to the pasture attribute corn grass, the grain attribute corn on the cob was the real divine weapon. I remember that corn is not only high-yielding, but it is also the easiest to grow compared to other grains. Liszt remembered watching some short videos about Africa. Africans love to grow corn the most because they could plant it directly in the field. There was no need to weed or fertilize it. When it matured, they would wait for the weeds to wither. They find that corn can also produce corn cobs. Corn can be processed into cornmeal to make their staple, sima, similar to corn paste, which can be eaten by hand. It would be great if it really mutated into corn. Black Horse Island is huge and I don't have enough serfs to farm it. But corn, as long as it is planted, I don't care. When harvest time comes, the yield may not be high, but it is better than planting other crops. It will be invaded by grass and there will be no harvest. This was a beautiful expectation. In order to get the possibility of corn cobs, List decided to seriously solve Brad's job. Brad was a crystal craftsman who carved crystal objects for a living. He had a good income in Coral City and belonged to the wealthy class of civilians. However, because of the confidentiality of the telescope, he was sent to Flower Town by the Count and became a subject of List, settling in Flower Town. Now the telescope did not need to be made, and volcanic glassware did not need to be made. He had nothing to do all day. I originally planned to let Brad make glass in the future, but now it seems that glass can't be studied for a while. Even if it is studied, glass seems to be very brittle and difficult to carve. It seems that glass is blown out. List remembered seeing glass making. The red-hot glass is blown, expanded, and then artificially shaped to get glass products, such as wine glasses, teacups, jars, etc. In addition, there seems to be a flat pressing method to press the glass solution into flat glass, which is used on the window glass. Unfortunately, these two production methods and the produced items seem to have nothing to do with Brad's profession. He can't always change his exquisite carving skills to work with high-temperature glass solutions. As for the finished glass, there is no need for further engraving. Let him learn other carving arts. List thought again. But he quickly rejected it. Craftsmen were basically inherited from generation to generation. It would be very difficult for Brad to change to other carving. His thinking has become rigid. When he was asked to carve volcanic glass, it was obvious that he was very reluctant. Moreover, the craft of crystal carving also needs to be constantly practiced to preserve. I'll just take out another batch of crystals and let him keep working. Anyway, when the castle is built, a lot of crystal products will be needed to decorate it. When this batch of crystal carving is finished, it's almost time to mine new volcanic glass, which will keep him busy. The 5 recovered dragon bones are still waiting for me to save them. He made a decision. He can sleep in peace. Early the next morning, riding the chocobo Loki, he went to the meadow and changed to the king of black blood horses, Lightning. In fact, he no longer needs this ordinary dragon horse mount, but in order to show that the Lord and his followers are with the knight, he still needs a horse. Even the Sapphire Grand Duke has a blue blood horse mount, often charging with his knight. Lightning is the link between List and the knight. Go! With the retainer knight, List went straight to the 3 green tea trees on the northern hillside of the Ice Grass Hill. The green tea was still being picked, and it grew very well in this season. The tea leaves fried could satisfy List's drinking needs alone. Casting magic eyes, it was easy to see that the largest green tea tree in the middle had already given birth to a sprite worm. Carl, this green tea tree has already given birth to a sprite worm. Protect it, and notify me immediately once the sprite worm is born. Knight's Glory Favors. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.